Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to professors, associate professors, our invited speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be your MC for the day. I am Dr. Rafiq Pakri Mohamad from Medical Faculty of MAHSA University. Welcome to MAHSA International Medical Technology Conference 2021. Dear participants, we would like to start the program with National Anthem. To begin the opening ceremony with the blessings, I would like to invite Mr. Mahadi to lead the dua recitation and a moment of silence.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Al-Fatihah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ya Allah, Ya Rahim. Praise be to God, the Lord of the world. Peace and blessing upon our Prophet Muhammad SAW and his companion, and for those who followed his example to the Judgment Day. Allahumma Ya Allah. On this blessed morning, in conjunction with the MAHSA International Medical Technology Conference 2021, we beseech thee and grateful towards you in favor of all the infinite blessing to us, your humble servant, to live in safe and prosperous life. We seek your blessing for a flawless progress of this event from the beginning till the end. We seek your guidance to steer clear of events that would detrimental the progress of this event. Ya Latif Ya Rahman, please bless us with your tawfiq in hidayat. Please guide MAHSA University to greatness, peace, glory, and prosperity in this world and the hereafter. Make us your righteous servant that followed your commands and neglect the sinful act. Please forgive us for our wrongdoing. Rabbana alaika tawakkalna wa ilaika anabna wa ilaika masir. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azabannar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Ameen, Ameen, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Thank you, Mr. Mahadi, for the dua. May our event today run smoothly and be blessed, inshallah. On behalf of MAHSA International Medical Technology Conference 2021 Committee, I would like to thank everyone who is watching live through YouTube and Facebook. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to begin with, I would like to invite Prof. Dr. Rusli bin Nordin, the Dean of Faculty of Medicine, Bioscience and Nursing, MAHSA University, for the welcome speech. Please welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rafia and Mr. Mahdi for the recitation of dua. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and very good morning to everyone. It gives me great pleasure to welcome everyone to this MAHSA International Medical Technology Conference, Mi-MED-2021, which will be a two-day conference from 22nd to 23rd October 2021. So this virtual conference theme, Living Longest, Healthiest and Happiest Life, is timely as we are about to enter the endemic phase of the COVID-19 pandemic. In essence, we have to learn to live with the COVID-19 virus. Recent development in Malaysia, including permission to travel across national and international borders, have seen a return to near normal life and livelihoods. Droves of vehicles are making a comeback on our roads, and people are planning and preparing to travel for holidays or visit loved ones in kampung rural areas. And we are actually extremely proud to have with us today Tan Sri Dr. Chua Suelek, former Minister of Health Malaysia and a former member of the National Economic Council Malaysia, and also Tan Sri Dr. Haji Muhammad Hanifa bin Haji Abdullah, Executive Chairman of the Board of Directors, MAHSA University and MAHSA Group of Companies, addressing this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, past encounter with COVID-19 virus has been tragic, and recent statistics have only served to remind us that the COVID-19 virus is still a major threat to our lives and livelihoods. As we usher into the endemic phase, we need to be vigilant and continue observing the SOP in order to reduce infectivity in the community, despite achieving more than 90% full vaccination status. We have also started vaccinating our young adolescents as they return to schools across the nation. We must continue to provide vaccination services to those that have not responded to the vaccination drive. This conference brings together students, academicians, and researchers in the health sciences to address the current issues of health across the world. The objective include the following. The first one is to provide a platform for researchers, academicians, and practitioners from all over the world to present their research results in the fields related to medical, nursing, and bioscience subjects. Number two, to integrate knowledge and expand the current practices of medical, nursing, and biomedical sciences, including solutions to current problems. And thirdly, to establish networking and collaboration with other universities and industry experts. The scope of this conference is to encourage research and innovative ideas in diverse areas from medical, nursing, and biosciences perspective. The ideas should align with the needs of the society and demands from the industry in the wake of the fourth industrial revolution and sustainable development goals and strategies. We hope that this conference will create greater awareness in research and encourage greater collaboration in international research. Ladies and gentlemen, our greatest appreciation to the list of 15 illustrious speakers from Malaysia, Australia, New Zealand, UK, USA, India, Ireland, and Saudi Arabia, who have consented to share their experiences and expertise given the short notice for the conference. We are also fortunate to have support from colleagues that have submitted their abstract and will participate in this conference. Now, I just want to list to you the speakers that we have for today. Number one is Dr. Musa Muhammad Nordin, consultant pediatrician and neonatologist, Damansara Specialist Hospital, Kuala Lumpur. Secondly, we have Professor Dr. Sharul Bahia binti Kamruzaman, Professor, Faculty of Medicine and Deputy Dean of the Higher Degree, University of Malaya. We have Professor Dr. Wali Mutazamil, President and Chief Executive Officer, Behavioral and Mental Wellness Coaching Incorporated, USA. We have Professor Dr. S. Umaha Wiswari, Professor and Head, Department of Biotechnology from India. We have Dr. Balvinder Singh Gill, a consultant public health specialist and Head of Specialist Resource Center, National Institute of Health Malaysia. We have Dr. Manimaran Ayachami, which is Fermentation Manager from Ireland. We have Professor Dr. Mustafa Bodrik, Consultant Advisor, Health Academy, Saudi Commission for Health Specialities, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Professor Dr. Suresh Kumar Subaya, Pro Vice Chancellor from Bharat Institute of Higher Education and Research from India. We have Datin Ranuga Devi Bakirisamy, Advocate Solicitor from the Ranuga Associates and Malaysia. We have Associate Professor Dr. Umakant Venkatraman Girija, Fellow of Higher Education Academy from UK. We have Dr. Christine Clark, Chief Executive Officer and Founder from New Zealand. Dr. Ganesh Kumar Mani, Research Assistant Professor, Department of Physics from Korea. We have Dr. Christopher Okin, Senior Lecturer in Biomedical Sciences, UK. Dr. Sangeeta Kaur, Senior Lecturer, Epidemiology and Public Health Medicine, Perdana University, Malaysia. And last but not least, Dr. Abdi Osman, which is a lecturer and academic integrity officer, coordinator, People Pet Project, School of Health, Federation University, Australia. So, ladies and gentlemen, our organizing scientific IT and multimedia committee members have been particularly diligent and inspiring in ensuring that the conference is a resounding success. We are blessed with the enduring support from the Executive Technical Committee chaired by Associate Professor Dr. Allah Rao, Senior Director, MAHSA University, and of course our conference board chaired by our beloved Professor Tan Sri Dr. Haji Muhammad Hanifah bin Haji Abdullah, Executive Chairman of the MAHSA Group. We truly hope that this conference will stimulate further research and output that will result in many more years of living longest, healthiest, and happiest life. With that, thank you very much and God bless, and I hope that everyone will enjoy this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, for the warm welcome speech and the introduction of the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, next it is my pleasure to invite Prof. Dr. Sri Kumar Chakravarti, the Director of Postgraduate Studies, Research and Innovation of MAHSA University, for the opening speech. Please welcome, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Rafia, and thank you to all of you here for having made your presence here this morning to listen to our opening ceremony. Respected Tan Sri Chua Soilek, Tan Sri Professor Dr. Hanifa, Dato Vice Chancellor Professor Ikram Shah, Professor Kesavarao Allah, respected deans, deputy deans, Prof. Rosli, Dr. Paul Raj, Dr. Vetri, Max, Marcom, participants, speakers. There is only one thing guaranteed in life, and that is death. Everybody who lives has to die. As much as that is the only thing that is guaranteed, we all want to live longer, healthier, and happier, which is the theme for today's conference. So, but that is mankind. We always want to make sure that our existence in Earth makes us useful to Earth. That's why we want to live long, healthy, and happy. Not only useful, but also we don't want to be a burden to others around us. So we need to take care of our health. That is where the theme longer, healthier, and happier comes. Even though there is only one thing that will happen to us at the end, that we are all going to die. So while we are alive, let us live long, let us live healthy, let us live happy. In the Indian tradition, in the Indian mythology, there exists a god called Shiva, who is prayed as a god not only in Indian mythology, but also in Indonesian culture, in Nepal, in Tibet, and so on, who is actually a saint with a snake around his neck and a weapon which is a trident. Now, mythology goes that a trident has 3 prongs and each prong is for one life source. So the trident is to make sure that you control the 3 life sources or life energies and lead a good life. Now, for those of you who are into DC comics and DC movies, I'm sure you've seen that even Aquaman has a trident because a trident is the best weapon. For those of you who are wondering that Mi-MED, MAHSA International Conference of Medicine, Medical Technology, I mean, what does this encompass? Is it medicine? Is it health sciences? Is it nursing? Is it biotechnology? Again, this is a trident: medicine, biomedical science and biotechnology, and nursing. Now, why is this a trident? For those of you who are into the stock market, you might have seen investors who invest into the healthcare trident, which is the hospitals, which is medicine, healthcare, which is biomed, biotech, and nursing. Everything is together when it comes to investing, when it comes to the stock market, when it comes to building a hospital, and so on. Which is why for some of the participants today, there are many students here today, for some of you, if you feel that, am I into medicine or biomedical science or nursing, this is a conference that has 3 prongs of a trident to show that we are actually focusing on the healthcare trident, which is why we are having 3 streams. And this conference comes right at the time of the COVID crisis, where everything is now online learning, where even the most traditional of doctors who always thought that I should see patients face to face is now doing online consultancy. And at the time of IR 4.0, where people say that websites say that technology will replace 80% of doctors in the future. So this conference is basically to disagree with the fact that technology will replace 80% of doctors in the future. Instead, technology is going to allow the doctors to focus on what makes them good doctors, what makes them good physicians, and nurses on what makes you good people in patient care and in innovating your nursing curriculum and in biotechnology and biomedical science, where you have automation, and automation is part of IR4, and this will do the repetitive part of the work. We are worried that medical specialties would lose out in the next few years because we may lose jobs, but every medical specialty will benefit from digital health, and digital health is the health of the future. And now we have artificial intelligence. A lot of MAHSA research is going on in artificial intelligence, wearable sensors. A lot of what we plan is already done by the smartwatch, virtual reality. Now, all this, which was thought as maybe disruptive technology until about 10 years ago, are now changing the way in which patients and doctors perceive healthcare. We see healthcare in a different way. Now, I don't have to go and see a doctor if I have a chest pain immediately, because I have my smartphone with which all I need to do is put my thumb on the sensor and I can get an approximate idea of my pulse, my blood pressure, and my stress aspect, my stress level aspect. Now, you all know about Silicon Valley has the top investments in the world, and the investors said a few years ago that technology will replace 80% of the doctors in future, because machines are more accurate, more objective, more cheaper than doctors. Everybody thinks doctors charge a lot, while when you go to a doctor's consultation fee is 40 ringgit with medicines. But if a plumber comes home to repair your pipes, he would charge you 120 ringgit for a house visit and about another 100 ringgit for his consumables. So as much as the doctors are supposed to earn a lot, we are probably earning among the least. And now, science and technology, Silicon Valley investors say that because of machines that are more accurate and cheaper than the doctor, we will not need doctors eventually. Again, this conference today is to disagree with this and to show that technology in medical specialties will allow doctors to focus on what makes you all good physicians, and to focus on and allow nurses to focus on how you can innovate, and allow biomed and biotech to produce more innovations in healthcare devices. And biomed and biotech is very important now in healthcare, because now we have wearable devices that can monitor the, even in pediatrics, you have devices that monitor the mother's and child's vital signs when the child is being born, in obstetrics and gynecology, in pediatrics, so that in cases of emergency, already in many countries, even before the ambulance reaches the patient, the doctor is already monitoring the patient through satellite and through smart devices. When we were medical students, we studied about diseases like Duchenne's muscular dystrophy and a lot of genetic diseases, cystic fibrosis, Cartagener syndrome. Now, my dear students, I know many of you are students here, but 60% of you are students. We have a gene editing technique which is quite controversial, but this treats most genetic conditions. And these conditions can be treated in utero even before the baby is born. And now we have whole genome sequencing. A whole genome sequencing is like buying your genomic sequence from Shopee or Lazada for, if I'm not wrong, for as low as $35 you can get your genome sequence. So the pediatrician will be able to diagnose your child. You will be able to know what your child is like. You will even know the IQ of your child or your child's interests, likes and dislikes, and so on. In other words, we could be prepared for the child that is going to be born to us, and we would already know how the child is. So gene sequencing is a crystal ball. So what is in future for doctors? With the new IR 4.0, we need creativity and more problem solving skills, because right now our curriculum has to change, and we need to understand that automation is going to help us. About 40 years ago, we didn't have ECGs. 30 years ago, we had ECGs that even interpreted the diseases. Well, as a student, I had to see the PQRST wave to tell me what it is. Now the ECG comes out with a diagnosis that it is a right bundle branch block or Wolf Parkinson's White syndrome. So I don't have to learn medicine. I just have to know English to read the ECG. And until 20, 30 years ago, MRIs, we have to interpret. But now, MRI comes with the interpretation. So again, as a doctor, I need to know good English. A little bit more of my skills is all I need, because the software is even going to suggest what treatment I should give. So, what do I need as a doctor? What do I need as a nurse? What do I need as a healthcare worker is not just your skill, but also other aspects such as empathy, creativity, communication skills, and interacting with patients. So, digital technology has come in. We are doctors, we don't know about digital technology, but we need to know that artificial intelligence and robotics will take our jobs in future. So, but let's not be scared that we're going to lose jobs. There will be areas or jobs that are more affected than others, but as long as we ensure that we do our best for the patient, that is what that matters, to lead a long, healthy, and happy life for the patients. As an example, maybe in another 10 years, the Lancet industry will have to close because we will no more need Lancets, because now blood glucose monitors don't need a pricked blood to check the blood glucose. The monitor has to be placed on the skin and the blood glucose comes out. Now, recent technology says that we have contact lenses which are connected with smartwatches, which will monitor the blood glucose level of the patient all day. So, diabetics don't need to be pricked regularly anymore. So, as much as digital health has already created a huge impact on the way we work, but we need to tell digital health or robots or machines what are the tasks that we allow them to do. The many repetitive tasks that you cannot do in your work, you can tell the machines to take over, which are better, faster, cheaper, but you can take over the work of creativity or empathy. Now, a lot of what I have said now is what is going to be discussed today, so I'm not going to talk much about this, but I will finish with a story of Milo of Croton. We all drink the energy drink Milo. In fact, Milo is probably the national drink in Malaysia here and in many countries. Now, as much as we drink Milo, we don't know who this Milo is. Milo was an Olympian in Italy in the 6th century in a place called Croton. Now, this is a story, I don't know how far it's true, but it's been brought down from generation to generation, that when Milo grew up from a teenager to an adult, he decided to carry a newborn calf on his shoulders. So day by day, over 4 to 5 years, he carried the calf on the shoulders. So as he grew bigger, the calf also grew into an adult ox, and Milo also got stronger because every day he was carrying a calf which was becoming into an adult. So his muscles also improved. His body also became stronger. And he was lifting and carrying around a big ox in over 4 to 5 years. People started laughing at him, but when they saw his muscles and when they saw him win over numerous Olympic games and all that, they stopped laughing. Now, the same thing is with our medical program. This is a message for all you students out there. The same 5-year period which Milo went through carrying his ox, carrying the calf, which became an ox, you are carrying your books, which actually over 5 years get outdated, and you need to change your knowledge all the more. So you need to carry more and more books. When I say carry, not physically carry, but carry in your mind. So as you carry your books, as you keep adding to your knowledge, and as you grow on strong in the mind, you can carry more and more knowledge. So at the end of 5 years, the same period which Milo got stronger, you become stronger as a doctor or as a nurse or as a biomedical scientist or as a technologist. Now, what happened to Milo? In the beginning, people laughed at him. Now, the same thing is going to happen to you. In the beginning, people will laugh at you. They'd say, stop studying, let's go out and let's have a party or let's play and all that. Especially if want to be innovative, people will laugh at you. But continue what you're doing and always start small with a calf and become an ox and be consistent. You'll have to progress more so that you face bigger challenges and you don't give up, and get ready to face setbacks. We will all reach a plateau. So will you. So will all of us. And at that time, find a new way forward. Just like water looks for ways forward, you will also have to do it. So to ensure that we satisfy you in keeping abreast of all the latest medicine and medical technologies, our scientific sessions today are also placed in three prongs of a trident: a medical stream, a biomedical stream, and a nursing stream. So we have put all of you in three teams, national and international students, and trust me, to put you in these three teams, the Faculty of Medicine and the organizing committee has stayed up overnight the past few weeks. The past 3 nights, I think nobody has slept, but we assume that we hope that you're going to get a power packed 2 days of actual knowledge for your research, collaborations, and interactions, and for really rocking sessions. So I'm also going to look forward and lean back and relax and listen to all the scientific content that's going to go on today. So thank you once again for this opportunity, for giving me this opportunity to talk here. And I hope we all have a fruitful session. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you, Prof, for the very interesting and insightful opening speech. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Vice Chancellor of MAHSA University, Professor Datuk Dr. Ikram Shah bin Ismail, to deliver his speech and inaugurate this conference. Please welcome Datuk.
Thank you, Dr. Rafia. And Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to welcome all of you to the inaugural MAHSA International Medical Technology Conference 2021, or Mi-MED-2021, organized by the Faculty of Medicine, Biomedical Sciences and Nursing, MAHSA University. It is unfortunate that this year's event has to be conducted virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions. However, I hope that you will be able to conduct these future references face-to-face and thereby welcome you to MAHSA campus for a more intimate gathering. I think the conference has been described in detail by Dr. Prof. Sri just now. And as we all know, the theme for this year's conference is Living Longest, Healthiest, and Happiest Lives. This is an interesting theme, and it is particularly relevant currently in the light of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, where our physical and mental health is being constantly challenged. And as Prof. Sri mentioned, the scope of this conference is to encourage research and innovative ideas in diverse areas from the medical, nursing, and bioscience perspectives. The COVID-19 pandemic has underlined the importance of medical sciences education and the need for medical, bioscience, and nursing professionals to work together as part of the front line of healthcare services. The pandemic has also emphasized the role of researchers in health and medical sciences and public health managers in managing health challenges, particularly with the production and delivery of life-saving vaccines within a relatively short time. Research will always lead the way to evidence-based advancements of every field, including medical sciences. And MAHSA University aims to be a research-focused university that synergizes research with teaching to produce future-ready graduates. It is an honor for MAHSA University to have distinguished keynote and plenary speakers, as well as presenters from around the world to share findings and knowledge at this international conference. I trust this conference will provide a great opportunity for medical, bioscience, and nursing practitioners, educators, and students to expand and update their knowledge in medical sciences and its related technology. I hope everyone will take this golden opportunity to network virtually and create new knowledge centers leading to excellence in education and research in medical sciences that ultimately benefits the community at large. And finally, I would like to congratulate the organizing committee under the able leadership of Professor Rusli Nordin, Dean Faculty of Medicine, Bioscience, and Nursing, and Associate Professor Dr. Paul Raj, Prof. Zahara Saad, and Associate Professor Dr. Balachandran as co-chairs for organizing this conference so well. I wish all participants a productive and successful conference, and I would not want to stay any longer to prevent you from listening to the next speaker, our Tan Sri Chua. I'm sure we'll enjoy his talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the meaningful speech and officiating MAHSA International Medical Technology Conference 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to invite the next speaker, our chief guest of the day, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Dr. Chua Soilek, former Minister of Health and former member of the National Economical Council. Please welcome Tan Sri.
Okay, good morning. I'd like to begin by welcoming all the international and local speaker, participant, members of the organizing committee, and also ladies and gentlemen. I'd also like to congratulate the Faculty of Medicine, Bioscience and Nursing from the MAHSA University for organizing this International Medical Technology Conference. The theme of this conference, I'm given to understand, is Living Longest, Healthiest, and the Happiest Life. I must congratulate members of the organizing committee for choosing such an apt and appropriate, I would say, timely theme, because all of us are aware that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which spanned no nation, everybody today have to face the COVID-19 pandemic. And because of this pandemic, it has demonstrated to us very clearly how difficult it is to balance life and livelihood, despite all the advances in science and medical technology. It also exposed to us how fragile life is. Of course, related to this, there's greater awareness of how to keep ourselves healthy. Healthy living, not only physically healthy and free of physical diseases, but also emotional and mental well-being. So this topic, I would say, is timely and really appropriate and excellent. Because of the constant lockdown and the need to stay at home, coupled with a lot of people being unemployed and the need to wear masks when they leave the house, have also created an unprecedented challenge mentally and emotionally to us. So that you can see the surges of cases related to mental and emotional well-being, ranging from suicide to depression, anxiety, general fatigue, and people who just don't want to live anymore because of the constant lockdown and the need to stay at home. So at the same time, we must say that because of this pandemic, it has acted as a catalyst to accelerate digitalization and the utilization of technology in healthcare services, right up to home. So it has opened the eye of all of us that healthcare, while personal, but due to digitalization and technology, it can also be delivered up to our own house. So I'm glad that emotional well-being and mental well-being are issues that will be addressed in this conference. All of us aspire to live a long life, what we call to prolong our longevity. But today, we also hope that not only we prolong our life, that our life, while being prolonged, is a healthy and a happy one. In other words, we want to be aging happily and healthily. And in order to do this, there will be a complex interplay of many other factors that include our balanced diet, exercise, adequate rest, social interaction, family and friend support, work-life balance, and also today, because of advancement in genetic and medical sciences, we can even avail ourselves of doing a genetic test so that from the test, we know that what are the diseases that we are predisposed to. And that may range from certain cancer, depression, Alzheimer's disease, and even some cardiovascular heart diseases. So some people have availed themselves of this advancement in genetic science and have gone further by doing a genetic test themselves. Of course, the next medical and moral question is that after you know what you are predisposed to some diseases, what are you going to do next? How are you going to move forward? So these are issues which I do not intend to touch today. But the important thing is that we hope that this conference would foster greater collaboration between MAHSA University, especially from the Faculty of Science, Faculty of Medicine, Bioscience and Nursing, with all the other international and local speakers and participants, and ladies and gentlemen, so that we can then use this further collaboration and better understanding to advance our knowledge and teaching to the general public and to our students. Of course, before I conclude, I would like to thank experts from the National Institute of Health, the Ministry of Health, the University of Malaya, KPJ International, Mental Wellness Coaching Institute of the United States, the R&D Biotech from Ireland, the Saudi Commission for Health Specialists, the Montfort University, and speakers from New Zealand, Japan, Korea, and Singapore. Once again, I'd like to congratulate the organizing committee for having successfully organizing this conference, and with the support, especially from MACC, MACS, and that we from the medical faculty, bioscience and nursing of MAHSA University have put in great effort to ensure the success of this conference. Finally, I hope this conference will be a grand success, and we look forward to seeing you again when the MAHSA University hold another seminar or conference. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Tan Sri Dr. Chua Soilek, our beloved former Minister of Health and former member of National Economical Council, for the very interesting speech. Ladies and gentlemen, next I would like to invite our special guest of the day, Dr. Musa bin Nordin. He is consultant pediatrician and neonatologist, Damansara Specialist Hospital, Kuala Lumpur, and clinical professor of pediatrics, KPJ International University College, to say a few words. Please welcome Dato.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rafia. May I have the slides, please? Thank you very much. Distinguished guests of the MAHSA fraternity, respected speakers, friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. This is my brief for the next 15 minutes, looking at Malaysia's experience in handling or tackling the COVID-19 pandemic. Firstly, look at the global map, then place Malaysia on the pandemic curve very quickly. Sorry, back one slide, please. All right, then look at the way that we are going to exit this pandemic and then conclude. Next slide, please. Thank you. Right. This is the slope of the pandemic curve in the 2020s. You will see that there is so much emphasis, or rather what I would say misplaced obsession with freedom and rights in the Western community. And I think they're paying a big price for this. We're doing very well in Southeast Asia, the Asia-Pacific region, because of our previous experience with SARS-1 and MERS-CoV. There is a culture of masking and maybe even obedience. Now look at Brazil and the United Kingdom. The Senate in both of these countries has showed that natural immunity kills. This is part of the anti-vaccine strategy. The Great Barrington Declaration saying that let them get COVID and we will build herd immunity. In the Parliament in the United Kingdom, they reprimanded the British Prime Minister for causing the death of thousands from COVID. It was the worst public health experience. Next slide, please. That is Malaysia. We were doing very well, yeah, until, next slide. We were doing very well. This is the first wave, 22 patients since 25th January. And then the second wave, this was consequent upon the gathering of the Tabligh movement. This was the third wave since October 2020. Next slide, please. And the reason for that third wave was because of three trigger factors, i.e., the elections in Sabah. And I think they must take cognizance of this very, very bad experience. And then not retesting those who return from Sabah. And number three, not quarantining the patients. This is a failure of the technocrats in the Ministry of Health and the politicians in the governing party. Next, please. So, I have been a very loud noise, and may I quote this writer from The Guardian: sometimes loving your country involves kicking up a fuss. It means taking control of the narrative and telling the uncomfortable truth about a government that is letting its people down, right? And I have been vocal since the first patients with COVID was clocked on the 25th of January of 2020. Next slide, please. And I'm proud to be with these young doctors, young volunteers in IMARIT, the Islamic Medical Association of Malaysia Response and Relief Team, and all the other NGOs, Mercy Malaysia, Malaysian Relief Agency, SUCI, and many others which I cannot name. We've done an excellent job of teaming up with the Ministry of Health to try and flatten that pandemic curve. In fact, IMARIT was given the Golden Hearts Award from STAR in last year, right? This is how we flew in with the help of the EDGE funders and DIY, who flew in 9 flights. Yeah, this was in March last year, of PPEs, ventilators, masks, and the similar. Next slide, please. So, next slide, please. So what I'm impressing is that we are not just armchair gymnastics. We do things with our hand. We are on the ground. These are all the RTK antigens that we brought across to Sabah in October. Next slide, please. These are my young doctors, my young volunteers who spend 3 weeks in Sabah, and one of them spent 2 months in Sabah. Next, please. And this is the third wave that had its onset in late September and never flattened. And it peaked in June, July, until the Greater Klang Valley Task Force was formed, because the MOH had failed. And the reason why they failed has been mentioned by some of the previous Director Generals of Health. There was no leadership and pandemic management. And secondly, they did not collaborate with experts outside the Ministry of Health. And some of their strategies was playing a broken record. They were not thinking out of the box. With the Greater Klang Valley Task Force, where they had people from NGOs, from the Academy of Medicine, yeah, from the universities, right, coming together, right, and within a space of 2 months, they were able to drop the confirmed COVID cases they plunged the cases, and we hope it stays that way. Next slide, please. This is how bad Malaysia was. We have probably one, if not the worst, performing pandemic management in the world, right? We were actually at one time even worse than India, who suffered the Delta wave. Next, please. So there are many lessons that we can learn from our failures or our mismanagement. It is basic ABC of public health management of a pandemic, which means the FTTIS. Yeah? Find, test, trace, isolate, and support. This is a crucial component of the pandemic endgame. Find, i.e., you must have a digital app that is able to find the clusters, the sporadic outbreaks 2-3 weeks in advance, and then zoom in what I call your triage mass testing. And this is how we did it with Sri Lanka. And you need to use RTK antigen, not this obsession of the Ministry of Health with the PCR. Why? Because with the RTK, you can get a result on the same day. And so you can inform and immediately isolate the patients. And you can, within a space of 1 to 2 days, you can trace and quarantine the close contacts. A PCR in Malaysia, you do test on day 1, you are lucky if you can get a result on day 3. If you are in Sabah and Sarawak, you probably get it on day 5 or 7. By the time you've called the case on day 6, he has spread the disease and started a COVID cluster. Next, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the testing. You need to bring down the positive rate below 5%. That is a WHO benchmark. If you're under 5, then your pandemic is under control. From October last year until July, we were hovering between 6 and 18%. That is a failure of testing. Next, please. And it's important that you're asking them to isolate. You're asking them to quarantine. You are impacting on their livelihoods. You must make sure that you feed their families, make sure that their physical well-being, their mental well-being, with a focus on the B40s. In fact, 500,000 M40s has dropped into B40s. And of course, the other marginalized communities, the refugees and the migrant workers, right? Deal with the mental issues from suicides to child abuse to domestic violence. And don't forget the frontliners, the doctors, the nurses, the ambulance drivers, the army, the police. They have been on duty for the past 18 months. They are near to burnt out. And the more than 1 million jobless, the more than 40% of the SMEs have gone bankrupt, and the hemorrhaging of the national economy. In MCO1, we were bleeding 2.5 billion a day. MCO2, we were bleeding 600 million a day and 200 million a day in MCO3. Next slide, please. This is just, an infographic to show the suicides within the first, up until October last year. Next, please. So, there is this obsession in the Ministry of Health with adult herd immunity. I've not found this in any textbooks of medicine, including vaccines by one of the best authors on vaccines. We talk about population immunity. At this point in time, we've only vaccinated 71% of our total population. With Delta, you need to vaccinate 90%, period. So please, MOH, don't go around talking about 95% herd immunity. That is the adult population above 18 years old. Next, please. There you are. again, an article I wrote. I've been very, very active in, I was doing about 2 or 3 articles a day, trying to impress upon colleagues, the Ministry of Health, the science, with other friends, pediatricians, public health specialists, ID specialists, again, emphasizing the point that it is about 90% total immunity. Only then you can protect the other 10% who cannot be vaccinated or who choose not to vaccinate, i.e. the vaccine hesitant and the anti-vaxxers. Next slide, please. We have a big issue with vaccine hesitancy and refusal. I think we can deal with the 17% who are hesitant, the ones who are on the atas pagar, right? This 16% who are anti-vaxxers, right? They are a difficult lot of people. They are very few, but they are very loud. And I'm afraid the MOH has allowed them so much leeway to propagate their pseudoscience, right? One guy was saying from the PPIM, there is one medicine, there is one vaccine, you give 3 generations later, you get cancer. And this was influenced by some wayward thought, because that is not a vaccine. There has never been a vaccine in the entire vaccine history whereby you do it now and you get a side effect 3 generations later. This is total absurdity. This is total nonsense, which is being propagated by the anti-vaccine. Unfortunately, relying on konon experts from the pharmacology fraternity. This is pseudoscience, period. Next slide, please. This is a research that was done in Malaysia, right? And look at this. Sinovac, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, right? COVID, I did some basic analysis and I find that the breakthrough rate is twice with Sinovac compared to Pfizer, right? So to suggest that they are equally efficacious is wrong. I've been saying this for a long time and I have been sued for it, right? But the data shows this is not the first data. The first data came from Chile, head-to-head between Sinovac and Pfizer, and they showed the superiority of the mRNA vaccines. The second study came from Bahrain, which showed that the mRNA vaccines are superior in terms of vaccine efficacy when compared to an inactivated vaccine. Okay, this is the third study, right? And look at, you see, I'm very disturbed by this scientist because why did he or she deliberately not look at the hospitalization rate? Why? Only look at ICU admission and look at the data. 77% efficacy with Sinovac, Pfizer 92, AstraZeneca 95. Now, AstraZeneca is an outlier because it was given to our young Malaysians because it was an open lottery, right? So the young who were very IT savvy and could get in the vaccine. So they grabbed the vaccines, right? And look at death, 84%. Pfizer, 93%. AstraZeneca, 95%. Yes, all the vaccines are efficacious. Like if you have read Animal Farm, it says all pigs are equal, but some pigs are more equal than others. And I think it works here for vaccines. Yeah, let's call a spade a spade. Next, please. And I've actually calculated the breakthrough ICU admission rate. This is for Sinovac, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca. And the relative risk is that your chances of being admitted if you're on Sinovac is 5.5 times higher compared to Pfizer. As I mentioned to you, it's very difficult to compare with AZ because, again, these researchers did not correct for a major confounding factor, which is age, right? Now, the Bahrainis have done that and they showed that even corrected for age, the inactivated vaccines were inferior in terms of preventing infection, hospitalization, ICU admission, and death when compared with an mRNA vaccine, right? And next slide, please. When you look at mortalities, the risk with a Sinovac vaccine compared to Pfizer is 3 times higher of death. So, you know, ever since the Chile study and Bahrain study was out, me and friends were calling for those who had 2 doses of Sinovac to be quickly immunized, boosted with a 3rd dose. Yeah, with a 3rd dose, because quite evidently the data showed, the Chilean data showed that at 3 to 6 months after 2 doses of Sinovac, the protective antibodies had fallen by 4-fold. And that's why we needed a 3rd dose. And in fact, SAGE from the WHO has mentioned unequivocally that those who've had 2 doses of the inactivated vaccines, whether you are Sinovac, whether you are Sinopharm, you can get your 3rd dose within 3 months of the 2nd dose. And finally, the Minister of Health yesterday mentioned that all those who had 2 doses of Sinovac, you can get your 3rd dose 3 months after your 2nd dose. Next, please. Again, to those who are very, very persistent against the uptake of vaccine, and the bulk of them are Malay Muslims. All right, I have to make it very clear that the muzakarah of the muftis in Malaysia in December, even before the vaccine arrived in Malaysia in February, came up with a fatwa that the immunization with the COVID vaccine is mubah, i.e. is permissible. But if the government, i.e. if the Ministry of Health identifies you as a high-risk person for contracting COVID, then it is wajib, it is mandatory. So quite obviously, these anti-vaxxers among the Muslims, especially in Kedah, in Terengganu, in Kelantan, yeah, and in Pahang. In Kelantan, only 55% are vaccinated. In Kedah, in Terengganu, in Pahang, less than 70%. You know, as I mentioned to you, the Malaysian average is 72%, and Kedah 66%. Terengganu 63%, Pahang 64%. You know, the muftis, the political parties, the religious political parties, the Malay political parties, what are you doing in these states? You need to, I think you were all given, each member of parliament was given 20,000 ringgit to go down to the constituencies and bring them to the pusat pemberian vaksin PPV. Yeah. Next slide, please. I think I'm nearly there. We have big issues. Yeah. Schooling for children, and this is a note from the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health. You know, because even the United Kingdom is dragging its feet in the immunization of children. Yeah, they're only giving 1 dose of the mRNA vaccine to children between 12 to 17, and even then, they prioritize 16 to 17 or 12 to 15 with comorbidities. The Royal College of Pediatrics and Child was really upset. And this is the mention, the loss of access to school is probably the single most important issue for children currently. And in Malaysia, the Malaysian Pediatric Association, PAGE, Parents Action Group on Education, some academics, we work with the architects in University Malaya, yeah, and colleagues, pediatrician, ID specialists, we came up with an SOP, what we call healthy classroom, healthy school buildings, to make sure it's well ventilated, good filtration, open your windows, yeah, healthy policies, healthy activities, healthy curriculum, and healthy vaccination. We call for 90% immunization of teachers and staff, yeah, and students before we open the school for all to do face-to-face teaching. Next, please. Yeah, you know, many saying, no, children, less transmissible, less likely to get. Hello, last year in 2020, we had 13,000 cases. This year alone, we've already had 400,000 cases. Last year, we had 6 deaths. This year, we've had 78 deaths. Isn't that enough? Why should any child die from COVID? In Singapore, it was 0 death. In Australia, it was 0 death. We've already had 84 deaths. So that's why we must get our kids immunized, yeah, 12 to 17. And we have to look forward to the vaccination of children 5 to 11 years old. Because that 400,000 kids who's got COVID, 1 in 7 will get long COVID. You know, they get brain fog, anxiety, mental confusion, they get joint pains, they get muscle aches, they get difficulty in breathing. All of these systems can be infected. And imagine living that for the rest of your 70 years of life. Please. Next, please. And we need to invest in the management of long COVID. In the United Kingdom itself, there were 33,000 with long COVID, right? And they have invested $68 million in research and $182 million in long COVID clinics. What is the Malaysian government, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education doing in terms of long COVID? We've got 400,000 cases, right? Just take 1 in 7. How many cases of long COVID have we got? Next, please. Right, so I'm nearly there, and this is adults. 5 up to 20% get long COVID. I've got friends who are athletes. Now they can hardly walk 5 steps, and are breathless. Next, please. So this is the end game. This is the end game. I've put this KPI, key performance indicators for the Ministry of Health for the first 100 days. Yeah, this looks at FTTIS, very specific indicators. Yeah, and then 5 other indicators, right, that looks at the number of cases, the burden on the hospital capacity or surge capacity, the RO number, right, and then the mental status of our COVID sufferers, right, and then risk communication. Next, please. So this is, I think, my last slide. So we've got to do it differently, you know, not business as usual. It means we need responsible leadership, technocrat and political governance. We need warp speed, FTTIS. We need a vaccine rollout that would immunize 90% of our total community. And we need IR 4.0 digital solutions to ensure that we are at the cutting edge of the science. I must say congratulations for that 4 youth whose COVID Now program is probably one of the best in the world. Imagine only the past 2 months when we should have had it since March last year, but better late than never. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope I gave you an overview of COVID in Malaysia and my personal perspective. I may be wrong because COVID is an evolving disease and we are learning new things every day. And can I personally thank Professor Rusli Nordin, because he was the professor who actually contacted me and wanted me to discuss this issue. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Datuk, for the very informative speech. May I now request Prof. Rusli to present a certificate to Datuk Dr. Musa as a token of appreciation. Please welcome Prof. Rusli.
Thank you, Dato' Musa Nordin, for a very inspiring speech and very engaging for all of us in this conference. And the organizing committee from MAHSA University would like to thank you very much for this a very short notice for you to come and share with us the latest of the pandemic of this COVID-19 with us. So thank you once again, and we look forward to see you. And with this, I think it is a digital certificate, Dato', yeah? And so I cannot hand over to you physically, but I think you can see the certificate, right, of appreciation, proudly presented to Dr. Musa Muhammad Nordin. So thank you once again, and hope that we can hear more of your wisdom in future. Thank you.
Sama-sama.
Thank you, Dato', and thank you, Prof, for the certificate presentation. Next, we are honored to introduce our very first keynote speaker, Datin Ranuga Devi M. Pakrisami. She is currently advocate and solicitor of Ranuga and Associate, Peguam Bela and Peguam Cara Mediator, Selangor, Malaysia. Dear audience, please be reminded that you can leave your questions in the comment box and we will address them in the Q&A session. Without further ado, I would like to invite Datin Ranuga Devi to give the first keynote speech. Please welcome Datin.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rafi. Yeah, and I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak at this MAHSA International Medical Technology Conference 2021. And I'm very impressed with Dr. Musa's talk. He was so enlightening and so informative. Finally, we get a clearer picture of the pandemic that we are facing now. So without further ado, just give me a few minutes till I share my slides. I will be talking on the ethical and moral issues faced by the elderly. Okay, sorry. Can you all see my slide? Organizers? All right, I presume you can see my slide because just give me a few minutes. Okay. Okay, I will be talking on the ethical and moral issues faced by the elderly. Ever since the pandemic has affected most of our over the years, for the past 2 years, the care for the elderly has taken a back stage, I should say, because of the importance, because of the issues we were facing. But however, we still cannot ignore the elderly in our community. So, what does the United Nations Social Policy and Development Division on Aging says? A population is classified as aging when 15% of its total population are aged 65 years and above. Why is there so big a population of aging? It's because of decline in fertility. Life expectancy at birth has risen due to all the medical advancements and technology and the medical treatments that we undergo as ways, and the government is trying ways and means to keep us healthier and longer, and with that we need to have a healthy lifestyle. Life expectancy at birth has risen. So it was discovered that 2014 and 2050 newborns are expected to live till 83 years and beyond. I'm sure there are a lot of doctors here. I'm a lawyer, but these are the statistics that were given. So for that, we still need to keep our elderly healthy and engaging. So for that, we will let's first look at what our Malaysian Federal Constitution, Article 5 says. All persons are equal before the law and entitled to equal protection of the law. That includes the present law in Malaysia. We have these laws and policies in place. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. I'm sure you all can see. But with all these laws and policies, are we really equipped to care for the elderly? Of late, you can see a lot of newspaper articles that suddenly coming out, what are the elderly going through? Yesterday also there was an article in Star, if I'm not mistaken, how the elderly, have suddenly lost their income or their livelihood or their rental and how they had to cope. So, okay, we are looking at the families and be with families with children and all. But what about the elderly? What about the disabled? They are also citizens of Malaysia. They also need equal protection. So besides the lack of social services such as affordable care and housing, as well as professionally trained caregivers, the family to whom the elderly traditionally rely upon are either absent, oblivious, or goes through the motion without real care. Sorry, it's because they have other responsibilities. And suddenly this COVID-19 has thrown us all off track. And then we are suddenly faced with so much of issues. One of the biggest issues the elderly are facing are, of course, abuse and neglect. Now, of course, when I talk about elderly, there's a lot vast areas to talk about, but I'm just going to touch on every area of issues that are faced by the elderly. Let's look at abuse and neglect in the first place, and mostly it happens in the house. So what does abuse, what's the definition of elder abuse? In UK, it is defined as elder abuse, a single or repeated act of or lack of appropriate action occurring within any relationship where there is an expectation of trust which causes harm or distress to an older person. So it means elderly abuse, elderly or the older persons are sometimes mistreated or neglected by their own family members or relatives or caregivers who are in charge of their well-being. This may include also violence or threats, assault, verbal abuse, financial, physical, emotional, or even sexual abuse. It has been reported. But most of these issues, I should say, are swept under the carpet. I will tell you why as we go on. Some may think that the abuses or neglect of the elderly are exaggeration. However, WHO's statistically research records 15.7% of the elderly are abused. Don't think it's only happening overseas. It's also happening in our own backyard. Our neighbors are also going through the same things. But because we live in an Asian environment, we don't like to talk about it. Or we are just in denial of the things that are happening to the elderly. But as lawyers, a lot of the time we face financial abuses that has taken place over for the elderly, by their own family members. So, granny bashing. This is a term, that is derived in America. It's just to talk about what the elderly are facing. It's a silent cry. In the first world countries, these abuses are being highlighted, and the media, and there is a lot of protection for them. So you can gather information on or data, on the lack of health or lack of health care or suspect elderly abuse, because they've made it mandatory for reporting the elderly abuse. So increasing incidental of the elderly abuse or neglect has led to calls in recent years of addressing the needs of the elderly. One of the most important forms of protection available against the elderly abuse is recognized and advancement of human rights of the elderly type and discrimination. The Human Rights Society is playing a role, but they have so many areas they are covering. Elderly abuse is only a small portion because they have the child welfare, domestic, and then also the animal, welfares and all. So usually what happens to one who is abused, for the elderly when they abuse, what happens to them? They fall under the Domestic Violence Act. They don't have any special act for them. Domestic Violence Act also covers the elderly abuse. So as the population continues to age, the problem is likely will not just disappear. These are the data I've got. In 2019, 2019, 40% of population was 45 and above. Now, 2020, 22% of population are 25 and above. So as baby boomers age, the need for service for abused individual is likely to increase. So with that, we need to look at the abuses or the neglect of the elderly. So how do we do that? Can we report? Reporting elderly abuse is a good form. No proper detention or measures of screening in place, and no established framework in place to report elderly abuse, thus making disclosure of abuse and reporting of the perpetrators difficult. You know why is it difficult? Because the elderly are vulnerable people, and most of the time they are living with their relative or the caregivers. Now they cannot go and report about their own, children or of their own relatives who are also taking care of them, or it could be also their children or spouse of their children. Even if they report, if they report, the police will take it as a family issue, and they won't come and take effort. They'll just come. They won't do anything about it, or just they will advise the elderly to try to live calmly with the family, or they will tell the family members to take better care of the elderly, and they go off. So how will police can only take action if a report is filed. Most of the time, the abused are the victims. How will they go and file a report? Even if they file, where do they go after that? Do they come back and stay in their own house? Just like domestic violence, when a wife is abused, battered or not, they've got legal aid, or they've got this halfway house to house the woman and children away from the abuser. But elderly reporting, we don't have such thing. So this is a contrast that we are facing now, a problem we are facing in Malaysia now. Another big issue the elderly are facing is the financial issue. And as lawyers, we see a lot of these cases. In property transaction, alarmingly, there are too many cases where financial abuse is apparent, ranging from forging of the elderly's signature or coercion of the elderly persons to sign over title, rights, or doping the elderly to give powers or rights, allowing the abuser to manipulate the older person's assets and money. There was one case I had to handle where this elderly couple had a house, and the son had come back, wanted to renovate the house. So he wanted to go ask the parents to take a mortgage. The parents went to went to the bank, signed over for a mortgage. The son took the money, and of course, when you take money from the bank, you have to repay. The son ignored or failed to repay the loan. After a few months, the bank took action and wanted to auction the property. Then the parents, who elderly people in their 70s, come running to us to ask them to save the property because they have nowhere else to go. And when the son was contacted, the son said, yeah, I took the money. I mean, it's all gone now. I put it in my business. I've I don't have money to pay back the loan, but it's okay. Let the banks auction the house, and the parents can come and stay with him. what will happen to this old couple if they go and stay with the son? The mother will become a caregiver, a washer, a domestic help. Well, the father will become a gardener, a driver, ferrying the children to school, off and on. But I'm sure most parents would love to do that. But that is a toll on the older person. They have saved up all this money to care for the elderly at their to care for themselves at the older age. But when this happens, this puts them in a very difficult situation. Of course, then this case we could settle it. Sort of, we stopped the mortgage, the auction. We got a buyer to pay for to purchase the property for the market value, which was quite good at that time. Got them a smaller home, somewhere in the same vicinity, because they like to age in place. And then that story ended up, in a proper, in a better format, in the sense that they were helped and they had their independence still intact. But not all stories end up the same way. There are there are a lot of sad stories that have happened, and where the vulnerable adult are put in the streets or in nursing homes when all their hard-earned money is taken away from them. So and there's also another case I would like to highlight to you all about. It's about Lim Kin Hua against Ho Chin Lian. It's a 1996 case. This is an illiterate old woman who had poor memory and was reliant on her granddaughter for food, accommodation, and management of her affairs. So, of course, as a granddaughter, she invited the granddaughter to come and stay with this woman to take care of her, and also give the granddaughter a home and a place to stay. But what the granddaughter did, it was found that the granddaughter abused their relationship of reliance and exerted due influence on the elderly woman, causing the old woman to transfer part of her shop house to the granddaughter's name. That means she did a transfer property. The transfer was later judged as not valid because the old lady was not of sound mind. Remember, she had poor memory. So the granddaughter has abused her position. And when it came to court, and when the relatives found out about it, they quickly came and stopped the transaction and gave the property back to her. So we need also a national center defines financial material exploitations as illegal and improper use of elderly's fund, property, and assets. This is what we are trying to tell there must be policy, or there must be a law to protect the elderly from this kind of thing. And this is not the only things that the elderly are going through, It's not only money or parents' money is used without permission in a fraudulent way or shape or forms of financial abuse. There are other kind of financial abuses that are taking place. So we need a law to mandatorily influence, this kind of things happening. Currently, we have the Care Center Act of 1993. You all have the Private Aged Healthcare Facilities and Service Act 2018. These acts are, what are they for? They are more for the centers and for acts to regularize standard of healthcare services, the building, the nursing homes. But there's nothing for the elderly. You see, and now we are suddenly hearing that, a new law is coming. I'll be talking about that. So we need more laws in place to save the elderly, to safeguard the elderly, to protect them. The act also should include, when money is taken in any form of false pretense, using false documents to dope or take over the assets of the property of the elderly. We do have the Domestic Violence Act of 1994. We have the Penal Code Act of Malaysia. However, none of these acts focus on the elderly themselves. It's a wider act. It encompasses everyone in that act. But there's nothing special, nothing specially to focus on the elderly. Do you know the elderly people are the most vulnerable people for all the scams and theft and forgery that's going on? We hear a lot of cases, right, in the newspapers also. We are also told that Senior Citizens Bill is scheduled to be tabled in Parliament next year. Just yesterday, the announcement, or 2 days ago, the announcement came, where the question whether the government intended to formalize a special law to protect the senior citizen. But at a press conference, the Deputy Minister came and said that the ministry hoped to set up a senior citizens activity center in every parliamentary constitution nationwide. Another enforcement on another importance given to the building and building community centers. What about the elderly themselves? If everything is taken away from them, how are they going to live for the rest of their life? They need to be protected, to be cared for their golden years. So, it is also a financial abuse to withdraw an elderly's resources to his detriment or to advantage or the benefit of another person. So that is what is happening around our country. Their money, their hard-earned money is being used to benefit the children when they come back from overseas, to buy a house, to renovate a house, to pay for their down payment, or to buy a new car for them, and of course to start business or start a new venture which they want. So these elderly are using their hard-earned money to do all this. We are also told EPF money is still not enough to substantiate the elderly. So where are they going to get all this? What happens if the elderly lose all their income? They're going to become a welfare state. It'll become a welfare issue, social welfare. They'll have to find homes to put these people, to house these people. I'm told by a lot of the doctors, friends, that sometimes children are leaving the parents in the hospital, giving false address, and then they are going off without coming back to claim the parents. And these people are sent to old folks' homes. And our homes are already full of people of this nature. So we need to do something. The society has to do something to safeguard this elderly. Unexplained changes or alteration in legal documents are considered a financial abuse also. You'll find sudden changes in will or power of attorney. Wills only speak upon death. So what happens? Suddenly the person's will are changed, and suddenly the beneficiary is a different person. Like a power of attorney, there are two types of power of attorney that can be used. One is for care, personal care and welfare, and another one is, of course, for transfer of properties. The banks will always take a power of attorney from you when you are buying a house or taking a loan to purchase a property. Why? If you don't pay the property, they will take over the asset of your property. So you have to choose a person to make a decision about the care for this older person and welfare for the older person if they become mentally incapacitated. Some older person are asked to stand in as guarantors, when for the children or grandchildren. It's a rule of the thumb. This older person, when they're standing as guarantor, must make sure that they have money to write a check or the amount that they are guaranteeing for. Because they might, out of goodwill, sign as a guarantor. What happens when the person who takes the loan doesn't repay the loan? They will come after the guarantor, because the person who has taken the loan may be young, they may not have enough money. So they go after these vulnerable older people. And who are the people who always sign guarantor for? The elderly who sign guarantor for, it's always their own relatives, or friends, children, or people whom they know, where in their good intention they want to help these people. So what happens? Then this is where abuse takes place. So when the suddenly, in times of COVID like this, when people have lost their income, when they have no means of, it's a difficult time, all these old people are the ones caught in this net because they don't know, they themselves don't have income. They have spent all their money and they have utilized all their hard-earned savings to safeguard, to help the other uh, vulnerable relatives of theirs. So what's going to happen to this group of people? We cannot just leave them on the streets because it's because of this older generation that we all are having good quality of life. We had a good quality of life. Of course, this 2 years pandemic has caused a lot of hardship for a lot of us. But people with health and, still energy, they will bounce back. Do these older people have a chance to bounce back? Okay. So, elderly financial also abused where they are the pensioners, the pensioners are used. Sorry, Jane, are you talking to me to switch off the web? Because I know I suddenly see a stream here. Just a minute. Okay. So what happens to this pensioners? When one person, older person, pension is used by all the family members using this older person's pension and living out of the pension, when the pension itself is a small amount for them to live by. So this older person, they have a lot of medical issues as they grow older. So they will have to use their pension money for their medical benefits. Yes, some of them do enjoy free medicine, but some they have to buy, which are quite expensive. When the whole family lives out of this pensioner, they are not able to care for themselves. They have to feed the rest of the family. And a lot of children are not leaving the houses because of the comfort of the house. And they're living under the pensioner's income. Now, this should stop in some way because how else, as an older person, of course, you're not going to chase your children out to the streets. But it is the duty of the younger persons to know where their filial piety lies, not to burden the elder person. Another kind of elder abuse occurs in the knowledge and consent of the elder victim. So it's very difficult sometimes to get the victims to talk about it because no family will want to inform will want to report on their own family. So that is becoming an issue in our country mostly because we know sometimes, third party will know that the elder are being abused. But the elderly don't have a venue to go to. They cannot go to the police station because they cannot make a report. As I told you earlier, because they're dependent on the elderly. They're dependent on the children or the spouse of the children taking care. They need a home. They need someone to take care of them. So with all these issues, we need to do more for this group of people. What happens, to this? They will face a lot of psychological issues once they lose their income. Recent study shows, because of fraud and all that, and telemarketing, the elderly are the biggest group that are being scammed. You can always see on the papers reported how this elderly person has been scammed of so much of wealth, where somebody has called them and then, they've given off their PIN number, they've given up their OTP number to the scammers, not knowing who they are. I myself was once, one of the telemarketers had called me up saying they are from Bank Nagara and telling me that my card was being used they could give data and very convincing they are. So after questioning them, they were so convincing. I thought of, getting more information from them to see. I wanted to see, out of curiosity, how are they doing this telemarketing? So I carried on the conversation. They're very, I'm sure they're professionals, they're very good. They will tell you, they'll convince you that this, that you have been scammed, but Bank Nagara is trying to protect you, and this has happened many a times. And so to protect you, you have to do certain things. You must not cut the line. You must carry on the conversation and all that. And I said, okay, if all this conversation is on, I don't trust you. How do I know you are from Bank Nagara? They say, okay, if you don't believe me, just call this number, Bank Nagara number. You call, it goes back to them. Okay. Then I say, okay, now I put the phone. I'll come and see you in person. They say, no, don't come. Now SOP, we cannot, we cannot touch or see person. We can only communicate through the phone and all. Fine. So I knew already it's a scam, because nobody is from Bank Nagara is going to call you up. For at all, they will send you a notice or something like that. But I just see how they can impress a person. So as I was carrying on the conversation, they wanted my bank number. I mean, my bank is. They wanted to know the account, how much of money I have inside there, and how do I transfer the money from one account to the other or whatever, and all that, and what is my profession. Of course, I didn't give out so much of information, but I'm saying for a vulnerable person, that's what they will do, because they already get you into their confidence. So I carried on, and then they told me, don't worry, but don't inform the bank also, because there could be, the bank managers may be involved. So go to your ATM, go and draw out the money. By this step, when I started questioning, because I was going actually to the police station, so the police can hear all this conversation. They got wind of it, and the conversation stopped. But of course, I gave a report. Now, what I'm trying to tell you all is, those with elderly people, tell them what can happen. These are the ways the schemers are trying to scam, a lot of the money out of this older person. So, of course, when I checked with all my other lawyers, they said this is a normal thing that happens. They always do all this kind of thing. If they can do this to lawyers, can you imagine to the vulnerable people? So that they need protection. Of course, it's always coming out in the newspapers. They are always telling. But how many of this older person, get to are reading newspapers or having social media or other means of getting this kind of information? So it's very important also, we have to advise the older person not to fall into all this kind of scams. So what happens when the elderly lose everything? They lose their self-confidence, they become sick, they become, psychologically, they are very depressed, and this leads to further problems. But how many of them at old age will they have an opportunity to live a life again or to get back their job? We once had a prime minister who came back to office at 93. How many older people will have this opportunity? So it's very important that we also protect the elderly from all these kind of frauds that are taking place. The fact is, the assets lost was the product of long period of hard work and self-deprivation. During the youth is particularly devastating for the elderly. If you all have lived with the older or are living with the older person or know of older people, they are very careful. For them, security is very important because they like to hold on to their assets. They are very fearful of losing their asset. Security, most of them would have been brought up by women who came out of First World War or Second World War. That's when they're baby boomers who are now becoming the elderly. So children of that nature are very hardworking, and they have they love security. They love to save, as we all do. So they have saved all their life. In fact, very few of them even travel. Very few of them even had any kind of pleasures in their life. All their life they'll be saving for the children. Will come and they'll to give the best for the children, and to anyone else. So they've always been careful. So can you imagine people of that nature losing all their wealth or losing everything at old age? They know they've got very short time. So how will they recoup all that money that they have lost? So it's a very painful situation, because not only are they vulnerable, they are also dependent on the older person. So as they grow older, they become dependent. And some of them may have to be dependent or they may have to go into assisted living. So a person who has lost everything, they also lose the will to live. And they become a problem for the family also, because the family will have to take care. And it is, of course, not easy to take care of an elderly. They have to be trained. And now we are having maids caring for the elderly, maids who have left their home and they come here for a livelihood, and they are not trained in any way. So these are the people who are caring for the elderly. So we need more trained personnel, or we need to train people on this geriatric care. There should be a cost where the older population are aging and the baby boomers have enough money to care for themselves. They want an independent life. So we need to train a lot of these caregivers to care for the elderly, because most of them don't know. So we need better nursing homes and all to be built to care for this group of aging population. We all are going to be going to that phase one sometime or the other. So why don't we lay the road now for an easy transition to care, to live a comfortable life during our older age, in our old age. So what are the negative impact of this elderly people once they go through any abuse or scams? They have a pathological fear of crime. Some will not let anyone near you. They don't trust anyone. Emotional imbalance, a loss of trust in others. They don't talk. Sometimes they go into a cocoon, or they don't want to have communication. Loss of confidence in their own financial ability. They are frightened to care for their money, so they might give everything to their children or someone close to them to care, who can abuse this relationship, as I've told you earlier. And this leads to stress, isolation from family members, depression, hopelessness. Suicide is another common thing among the elderly, but most of them become very suicidal. And a lot of doctors will tell you the reasons for their suicide is because of depression and loneliness, especially during this COVID time. A lot of the time when we had this MCO, a lot of the elderly were very depressed, and they were going through a lot of turmoil within them. They couldn't meet their children. They couldn't see. That's a way of communication for them. When these things were happening, it was a very painful situation. So data on the elderly abuse in domestic setting suggested that in 14 incidents excluding incident of self-neglect, came to the attention of the authorities. Current estimate put the overall reporting of financial exploitation at only 1 in 12 cases, suggesting that it may be at least 5 million financial abuse victims each year. This is Asian around Asian countries. I'm not taking off the Western world, because there they have a lot of laws, and they have their laws in place and protection and policies in place. Ours, we have the policies, but enforcement is a bit difficult. And this now lately, we don't know how much more of abuses have happened during this current 2 years. We'll have to wait to find the statistics and the report, because we have other more important issues to deal with. And this has taken a backstage for the moment. So we are a bit, you see only slowly reporting of the elderly are coming out into the media, because media has got other news to cover. So with that, I'll just ask the organizers, can my video be shown? I've got a small video, 5 minutes, that shows the kind of abuses that takes place on the elderly. Oh, okay. Wait, this is a small video. Can you all see this? It's just 5 minutes.
Well, you can't. She's just not up to seeing visitors today or tomorrow. Well, it's just not possible. She's not seeing anybody, and she doesn't want to see anybody. No, not even you. You'll just have to wait until she feels better.
Ed, come here. I want that. Ed!
Now she's up again and calling me. I have to hang up. I'll call you soon when she feels better. Listen, Mom, you're just not in a position to have visitors right now. Maybe once you sign the documents, you'll feel better.
But I'm feeling fine.
Mom, we both know you'll feel better once you sign the house over to me. I just don't want you feeling overwhelmed with the burden of the house on your mind. All right. You might as well just go to your room then. Because we have nothing else to talk about until you sign. And you're not seeing any visitors until this is sorted out.
Oh, I hate these things.
Here, let me do it. What's your PIN number?
1970, your birth year.
Hi, Gloria.
Oh, hi, dear. How are you doing?
It's not working. We'll try again tomorrow.
But Mom, you had money in your pocket.
Come on, I don't want to hear about money we don't have. Let's go. Come on, let's go.
Mary. Oh, I'm hungry. Are you on your way out to the store again?
Oh, hey guys.
Oh, Phil, you're back. How was school today?
Oh, there's no school today, Gramps. Just practice.
Okay, I am on my way out. Dad, you stay comfortable. I'll grab some food and bring it back later.
But Mary, I'm hungry now.
You'll be fine for a little bit, Dad. I'll hurry, okay? Can you get your grandpa a glass of water and take him back to his room? Here, Dad, make sure you take your pill today too, okay?
I thought I already did.
Nope, and you missed yesterday too, so just take a couple of extra. I'll be fine, it just needs a nap.
What'd you say?
Nothing, Dad. Make sure to have a lie now. Okay, I'll see you guys when I get back.
All right, come on, Gramps. Let's go. All right. Almost there, Gramps. Almost there. All right, and there you go. There you go, Gramps. Let's go. Wait, you're not gonna just leave him like that, are you? He'll be fine. I don't know, man. That just doesn't seem right. He'll be fine. My mom gave him something that's gonna help him sleep for a while. Come on, we're gonna be late for practice. You know what? I just remembered. I gotta go home first and get my cleats. So I'll just meet you there, okay? Okay, yeah. I'll see you there. Okay.
If you or someone you know is experiencing elder abuse, please call the Family Violence Information Line. Elder abuse. Learn the signs, break the silence.
So, so that was my, small video which I found very useful, very informative, and it gives you an idea. This was taken in Canada, of course. We need more such videos or such short snippets to show what's happening among our community and bring awareness for the elderly. The least we can do for people of this nature, because all their life they've worked for the well-being of the nation. It's time we take care of them. With that, I thank all of you for having listened to me.
Thank you very much, Datin, for your interesting presentation and the sharing on ethical and moral issues faced by the elderly. May I now request Prof. Rusli to present a certificate to Datin Renuga as a token of appreciation. Please welcome, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Rafia. Thank you, Datin Renuga, for a very inspiring and informative talk. And certainly, I think we look forward to see you again in future, to share your wisdom about the elderly. So with this, the organizing committee would like to present you with this virtual certificate of appreciation. And we hope that we can meet again in the future. And thank you again very much for supporting our conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Dr. Rosli, and thank the organizers for inviting me. I did enjoy my presenting the talk and bringing awareness about the issues of the elderly. Dr. Prof, we all are going to be there soon, or some of us are already there. We need protection. Right. Thank you. Any questions? No?
No, I think we don't have any question. Thank you so much, Datin.
Thank you.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to invite our second keynote speaker of the day, Prof. Dr. Mustafa M. Bodrik, Consultant Advisor, Health Academy, Saudi Commission of Health Specialties, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Please welcome Prof. Dr. Mustafa. He will be sharing with us his take on recalibration for healthcare in the post-COVID-19 period, why, how, and what. Please welcome, Prof.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rafia. So I'm about to share my slides with you. I just need to get my window up and I will be ready to go and share that with you. And do confirm when you see it. Do you see it now? I have not had a confirmation. Can you see my slides?
Yes, Prof.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Professor Dr. Rusli bin Norden, distinguished VIP guests, esteemed guest speakers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is a distinct honor and a professional privilege to have this opportunity to address you in this keynote entitled Recalibration for Healthcare in the Post-COVID-19 Period. Why, how, and what? I'm a nurse, proudly a nurse, and a nurse that actually is affiliated and works as an adjunct faculty member with MAHSA University based in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And therefore, the journey that most of our postgraduate students go through is one that is familiar to me. I've also had 2 opportunities to visit the country, and so I speak with having that experience of the people of Malaysia, and it is absolutely a pleasure to join you again today. My first question is, why recalibration? If we look at the Merriam-Webster dictionary, to calibrate is to adjust specifically for particular functions. Therefore, to recalibrate happens when the system has drifted off the course. And therefore, we require a navigator to refresh the point of reference for navigating. And we do this with our devices. We constantly do refresh, refresh, refresh. And what is the case for us in this post-COVID period as colleagues across the healthcare disciplines to ask ourselves the question about calibration and then recalibration in our understanding in healthcare in the post-COVID period? So subsequent to the global pandemic, I asked the question, why must recalibration happen? How it could happen, and what needs to happen. And that's the journey we're going to go on in this keynote address. Let's first make the case for recalibration. If we look at it very carefully, the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation has given us this diagram to show that there's always looking at before a crisis, during a crisis, and after the crisis. And I don't have to do the anatomy of the pandemic because we know where we were before the crisis. We know what happened during the crisis. We went into a vulnerable state. We're in an active crisis state until the vaccines became available. And now we're emerging in the after crisis period. And they make the case for the crisis intervention goals, which is to normalize reactions, facilitate the normal recovery processes, restore individuals to adaptive functions, enhance a unit cohesion and unit performance in homogeneous groups, and identify individuals who may need professional assistance and refer as necessary. Now you may think, but what am I talking about? How is this related to recalibration? Just hold on a moment, and I'm going to make the connection for you. If we go back to the pandemic, right from the beginning, and that mid-March of 2020, when the WHO announced that this Wuhan virus was now going to be called COVID-19, and we began to plot its course across the world, we realized that there was collateral damage of the pandemic because it was an unfolding science. We didn't know what was happening. And what is collateral damage? Collateral damage is the unintentional injury or destruction on something other than the intended target. So separate from COVID-19 itself, what were the other unintentional injuries or destruction? And it's for that recalibration is needed. When strategic intentions are negatively impacted by the reality of operations in healthcare systems and education in health sciences, then healthcare as a system throughout a country, throughout a nation, throughout a region actually becomes affected. So what is collateral damage in COVID-19? So the literature started to define it. And the term was put as the unintended consequences, injury, or the negative effect as a result of a major injury. Editorials started to appear. First, do no harm with COVID-19. Corona collateral damage syndrome. Collateral damage. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on acute abdominal emergency presentations. And for all of those who are in the publishing lane, you know that if you were going to write about COVID-19, you had a very good chance of getting your paper published. So the global overview of collateral damage shows us that, yes, for physiological systems, to the patient, the unintended consequences, the human body suddenly had multiple morbidities. There were unexplained effects that COVID was having. And reports were kept on coming out from Johns Hopkins that was monitoring the global. And so again, publications came out, many reviews, minimizing collateral damage from COVID-19, distancing strategies, protecting patients who have multiple morbidities, collateral damage, medical care avoidance behaviors. What was this? This was a collateral damage where suddenly hospitals closed down, healthcare services closed down, and people with normal complaints or normal diseases were not able to actually access the hospital. Some of us don't even realize that the children were affected, because particularly in the UK, it was reported that the wider collateral damage to children in the UK was because of the social distancing, and they could not take the chance to reduce the impact on COVID-19 in adults. And they also needed to accommodate the surge capacity. Then the literature began to emerge on the consequences of collateral damage on education. Initially, there was immediate reaction, excuse me, and we remember Italy particularly, where suddenly they were graduating their final year medical students, regardless of whether they had finished or not, because they needed those healthcare professionals to supplement the workforce. So the collateral damage on education meant that some of the competencies were not completed, some of the modules were not completed, some of the sign-offs were not completed, some of the exams were not taken. There was also the instant transition to education technology and digital applications, and it was happening regardless of whether we looked at the socioeconomic status of the students. It's just that the technology had arrived, we needed to innovate, and we had to move on because COVID is here. Then emerged the term COVIDization of education. And what were the global trends? They started to talking about JIT, just-in-time learning, using new internet uploads, best practices. They began to talk about learning predictive era. Virtual international conferences suddenly were being given all over the world, and now you were able to actually get live streaming. Virtual faculty who didn't usually travel or perhaps did not participate in conferences were suddenly available online. They started to emerge with communities of practice online, and they were accessing virtual experts from all over the world because it became so easy, and that was the COVIDization of education as a global trend. But let's pause for a moment and say, okay, so we have all of that took place, that collateral damage. Was it necessarily damage? I've not begun to see articles. It's almost as if we dramatized it because it made lots of money for the networks. People were scared. Then they didn't want to come out of their homes. That led to the cave syndrome because they wanted to feel comfortable in their homes. And until today, there are people that have not been vaccinated. They don't want to come out of their homes. They're scared to mingle with people. That's now labeled as the cave syndrome because they stay in the cave. They've gone back to their primordial type of instincts. And what I'm challenging you as colleagues is to say, yes, we've heard enough of the drama. We've heard enough of the collateral damage. We've heard enough of, of what happened to education. So let's stop. And instead of looking backwards, let's look forwards. Let's begin to say, what needs to be recalibrated? We've gone off course. We've given up some of our best practices from before COVID. What are the things that we need to return to? What are the things that we need to maintain? And what are the things that we need to create and innovate? And the European Foundation for Quality Management in this regard has given us 5 enablers that we need to review when we do recalibration. 1, leadership. 2, strategy. What was the strategy pre-COVID? What was the strategy during COVID? And what is our strategy when we come to the new normal and we're emerging? People. We began to see people do different things. We saw people with talent. What are we going to do with them in the post-COVID period? Partnerships and resources. How did we manage with less? How did we share and have an attitude of cooperation, of collaboration? How did we use processes, products, and services? This cannot happen by osmosis or diffusion. This has to happen intentionally, where you have to recalibrate. You have to go back and say, let us set the standard on the scale, on the measurement device, so that we rethink what we are doing. What are our lessons learned? What are our enablers? How were our enablers impacted? And how are we going to prepare if another virus comes along? If we have a natural disaster in our area, it's a public health emergency. What are the principles? How are we across the healthcare professions going to stand together? Or are we going to go back into our silos? Are we going to go back into our separate departments? Are we going to go back into walking past each other and not even saying salam or good morning? Whereas when we were in the crisis period, we were standing together as humanity. We cannot lose those lessons as we go forward. What are the characteristics of those organizational enablers in terms of the global situation context? And there are 3 that I give to you today. So stop, like the traffic light tells you. You've been going. When last have you taken care of yourself? Do you make time to take care of yourself? What has happened to self-care? What has happened to self-compassion? All we have done during the crisis period, particularly at the peak of COVID without the vaccine, is always to catch the news. What's happening? What are the figures? What's happening with the vaccination? And the global situation, the global context has sometimes undone the systems. The systems have become somewhat broken down, gone off track. Strategic KPIs that we were looking at before the COVID period, when last did we look at those KPIs? No, we haven't got time for that. We're so busy with COVID. And that's what recalibration is about. Recalibration is setting those devices back to balancing, to navigating. But we also need to do that as human beings. Set the balance at looking at our spiritual health, our emotional health, our social health, visiting the parents, visiting those who are physically handicapped, taking them out. When last did you take one of the colleagues or family members that are disabled in some way or physically challenged for a drive? And while you are doing that, think through these 3 key characteristics that I'm going to apply to the organizational context, but it applies to the human context as well. Firstly, flexibility. We became extremely flexible in what we were able to do during COVID. Stability. There's certain things we stabilized, certain systems we felt we needed to put in place, some of the fundamentals. And then How did we align ourselves across systems, across departments, across seemingly non-linear entities? And we started to produce. We heard many stories. Have we captured these stories? Let's go further into what PIMSL has said about this. So these key characteristics, what is flexibility? Flexibility, according to PIMSL, is the cognitive capacity to adjust to changing demands and requirements. This is recalibration. Structural and process flexibility for what? For transformation. It's not just about being flexible with our structures and our processes. No, it is to transform. It is an opportunity that has been created. But it's not about all being flexible, because it has to be balanced with stability. There must be a core stability. And what is the stability? It's where we embody a degree of organizational constancy and permanence. It's that baseline that we have. It's that recalibration of going back to what are some of the standards. When we clean a unit, when we clean the hospital, when we clean the ICU, when we clean the labs, when we clean after we've done physiotherapy, when we clean after we have finished an experiment, we did it with extra caution. What are our standards so we can stabilize our practice into the future? And PIMSL says stability is the precursor for flexibility. You cannot strive for flexibility unless you have stability. And the dual, and this is priceless, the dual existence of stability and flexibility in transformation, that is where you retain the fundamentals while permitting redesign. So no one is saying throw the baby and the bathwater out. I'm a pediatric nurse. Don't throw the baby and the bathwater out. You need to keep the baby. What is the baby? The baby is the fundamentals. And you can still permit redesign because we've learnt lessons. What were those learnt lessons strategically and as far as our project portfolios are concerned? And the third characteristic for an organizational enablers is alignment. How do we now align our energies, our synergy of thoughts, ideas, strategies? Where were those notes that you made in all those hundreds and hundreds of meetings that you had online? When last did you listen to those recorded Zoom calls with the intention of going back? Because there were priceless ideas coming forward. People were being very creative and very innovative. And let's look between the thoughts, the ideas, and the strategies and agree on what is our common purpose to transform, to move from what we had before and embrace the new norm, but also be ready for the next public health emergency, the next public health challenge, so that we can focus on strategies, projects, programs, portfolios that link us to our transformation mandates. I'm going to do a synopsis at this point before I go into the second part. So in the synopsis, what did the pandemic reveal to us? You can see the question marks on all people sitting at the table. It revealed to us how we as human beings have made our existence complex. And unless we actually question that complexity, we are not going to find innovation and creativity, because creativity and innovation is found in simplicity. It's found in vulnerability. Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, and creativity. And as long as we stick to our complexities in our existence, we're not going to find the joy of simplicity. We're not going to access the joy of some of those simple tasks that we did during the COVID-19 crisis before we even knew of the vaccine, and it worked for us. The caring for fellow human beings, regardless of religious, nationality, age, orientation in life, socioeconomic status. We enjoyed just taking care of each other as human beings because we were in it together. So at this point, I'm pausing to say that whatever I've said until now requires us to repeatedly redefine what are our contemporary influences and what are our dynamics of change. What is influencing us these days? What are the societal reactions that impart degrees of uncertainty when the future was unknown? What were the things that got our fear? What gripped us with our fear? Complexity needs cultivation of new mindsets. And the new mindsets, with iteration between the three key characteristics between flexibility, stability, and alignment. Flexibility, having that cognitive ability to change and adapt. Stability is to find what is constant and what is going to give us a degree of permanence. And alignment is where we talk to each other beyond the false boundaries, beyond the false borders that we set up before, and not go back into our previous ways of doing things. How can we do things with a new mindset and cultivate simplicity in our complexity and embrace a transformative mindset that's a necessary prerequisite to produce tangible transformation initiatives and outcomes. So we must initiate, but at the same time, we must be outcomes focused. I now go into the second segment. The second segment is how do we develop leadership agility? What is agility? Agility is like mobility. Think about mobility. To be agile in our leadership, not to be stuck, not to be prescriptive, not to be fixed with our ideas, because that's what COVID taught us. COVID taught us to go outside our comfort zones. COVID-19 taught us that it did not respect position. It did not respect religion. It did not respect bank balance. COVID went across all boundaries. And that's what leadership agility is about, according to Sherwood and Horton Deutsch. And they say that leadership agility is developing a reflective organizational concept whereby you look at how you're going to adapt to the pace of change that's constantly accelerating. We saw how quickly was the vaccine created. And so a new uncertainty is going to take over, because as the pace of change accelerates, it increases uncertainty because we don't know the future. But what is leadership agility about? Is learning to adapt quickly to prevent the chaos that we saw at the beginning of COVID-19. So what should we do as leaders? And I'm not talking to people that are in leadership positions. I'm talking to anybody at the front line, anybody who is interacting with others, leadership being defined as the ability to influence another and prevent and put a stop to sustained uncertainty, because that is what is taking away our creativity and our innovation. Engaging organization and community stakeholders to co-create. You had many volunteers perhaps come forward. It doesn't mean the volunteers must now be forgotten until the next summer break or the next winter break. Institutionalize the volunteers by putting them as part of the organization. Bring people that are retired. Let them come once or twice. The previous speaker was speaking about the older folk that are sometimes not treated as well. How do we include them? Give them a sense of pride, a sense of dignity, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning to co-create desired futures. They've lived life and they have experience. They've made mistakes and they can tell you how not to do it. And then, how do you invest in creative and innovative action to check out what works and what does not? And from COVID-19, don't just look to see what worked. Look to see what did not work. And in that way, you have then 4 components of leadership agility, which is first self-leadership. If you cannot lead yourself, if you cannot manage yourself, if you don't have self-care, if you don't have self-compassion, how can you give to others tomorrow if you are empty today? How are you going to drive on the journey tomorrow if you didn't fill your petrol or your gas today? So self-leadership is also about self-care, self-compassion. There is a prerogative on each professional to prevent burnout, to prevent compassion fatigue, and it starts with you. And like they say in the airlines, I love it in the Malaysian Airlines where it says, in the unlikely event of there being a decrease in the cabin pressure, please attach the oxygen mask to your face before you help someone else. Clearly. And that's what self-leadership is about, is making sure that you have got that care and compassion for yourself before you start helping others. Then you can move to the context setting of agility and rearrange the context or the situation or the environment. The agility to get stakeholders and the community involved. And the last one being the creative agility to let out those energies and synergize and work together, or to have catalysts releasing ideas. There are 3 types of thinking. We tend to think as healthcare professionals and as people that have many degrees and lots of experience. We tend to think, oh, you have to be a critical thinker. Well, let me tell you that D. Fink said there are 3 types of thinkers. There is critical thinker, there is creative thinker, and there's the practical thinker. I'll repeat that. D. Lee, who's an educationalist, said there are 3 types of thinkers. Don't look down on people who are perhaps not as developed as you are as a critical thinker, because maybe they are a creative thinker and you may not be a creative thinker. And then you've got those that are a practical thinker that may not be creative, but they just have a practical way of doing things, and they are not really critical thinkers. And the best writers to produce research and the best writers to produce papers, when in a group you've got critical thinkers, creative thinkers, and practical thinkers. And that's where leadership agility comes out, where you use your influence to match the people and the human being to the tasks at hand, and respect each other for the talents, the capabilities, the ambitions, the competencies, the skills, the knowledge that we have. So let's come back to this topic of recalibration. So how do we recalibrate? I've said so much already in the first segment, And I'm going to give you a very short, and I wrote a editorial about this. How do you recalibrate with 4 criteria, which was adapted from Sally Shaw, and that's REIS, race. REIS. In German, race means journey. Firstly, go back to what you did in COVID and find out what is relevant, what was the relevance, and that's you're going to take to the future. Then go to the next level and find out, was it effective? Did it actually produce the results it intended to produce? Number 3, did it have an impact? Did it really make a difference? And finally, was it sustainable? And when you've got relevance, effectiveness, impact, and sustainability together, alhamdulillah, then you have a recalibration, triaging device so that you can go back as an organization, as a department, as a project, as a group of scientists, as a group of researchers, as a group of writers, as a group of people teaching in the simulation lab, and look to see what is relevant, effective, impact, and sustainable from COVID-19. So you recalibrate in terms of going forward on those criteria. And finally, how do you keep going in the absence of an entire nation needing professional support? So this was another editorial I wrote. I was contacted by my colleagues, the president of the Italian Society, Professor Walter, and he said, we've got Italian nurses that are burnt out. We've got Italian nurses that are committing suicide. Every day they were hearing of different suicides. And so I wrote this editorial entitled Negotiating, and this was during COVID, we wrote it, Negotiating the post-COVID-19 period, making the case for communities of practice. Just bear with me as I explain it to you if you haven't heard it before. Communities of practice is a proposed modality for large-scale COVID-19 recalibrating process. Because all of us, our lives have been touched either directly or indirectly. We know someone who lived through COVID. We know someone who got admitted. We know people that have passed on. May Allah accept them into paradise, for to him they have all returned. So how do we embrace the national experience that it's not just MAHSA, but it's the other universities, so that we actually have integrated, synergistic catalysts that are in some type of network arrangement. You don't need a collaborative agreement. Communities of practice originated from Etienne Wenger, and it was intended to be an informal way for professional people to get together that have the same or common interest. And Wenger and his wife Trainer, quite a liberated man. So when he got married to his wife Trainer, they both took the name Wenger Trainer. That's why it's Wenger Trainer, Wenger Trainer. And you'll see some of the earlier literature before 2015 just says Wenger. And he says they say there are 3 components that you have to look at if you want to form a community of practice. Firstly, ask yourself, have we got a domain? And what is the domain as defined here? Is what is our shared interest, and how do we get to know about a shared interest in our recalibration? Is because we are co-thinking. Don't let anyone in the group dominate. We are co-learning. The person that has been silent, ask them, what would you like to say? Because maybe everyone who's talking are critical thinkers or creative thinkers, and the one who's quiet is a practical thinker, and they're probably sitting with the answers. How do you go about co-mentoring? And how, as far as a domain is concerned, how do you strengthen those interactions and add value with internal recognition of the collective expertise in the group? Because we all bring different talents, different capabilities, different competencies, different knowledge, different skills to the table. No one person knows it all. And that's what recognizing the domain is about. It's about the co-thinking, the co-learning, the co-mentoring that becomes strengthened by interaction. And then it adds value. But what happens almost serendipitously is that the people in the group begin to feel valued because they're now making a contribution to the collective expertise in the group. On your own, you may not be an effective expert, but once you start working with others within a community of practice, you suddenly realize you can do more. Very often, and let me give you the analogy of working together in a publication group, or you want to write research, or you've done research and now you want to get together. Divide the group up. Your domain is publication, but you all have different skills. Some have the talent of brevity, and they can write the abstract, or they've got the creative thinker to give a real catchy and lovely title for the article that will catch the editor's attention, catch the reviewer's attention. Then you've got someone in the group who's obsessed with detail. Obsessed, give that person all the references. Make sure they put all the references. And you know who you are as you are listening to this. I can tell you myself, when I'm marking a PhD, I just finished marking a PhD, I took 3 days just to go through the references from the first to the last, making sure that and then I move into the thesis. And that's my contribution to the group. I work with someone else in my job in the Saudi Commission, and he's always questioning everyone's knowledge. And instead of getting irritated by him, what we've done now, because we spoke about it and we said, what value is he adding? He's questioning everyone. So don't get frustrated with him. Don't get annoyed by him. Separate the person from the behavior. Separate the talent and the creative thinking that he's bringing. And he's getting you to refine your thoughts. He's getting you to defend your thoughts. He's getting you to defend your point of view so that you can do it with deductive thinking or inductive thinking or inductive logic. So that's the domain. Spend some time on trying to connect. And not because you all work in the lab. No, maybe now you're going to look at infectious diseases differently and realize that you need microbiologists, you need hematologists, you need chemists to come together because no organism exists on its own. Then you look at the community itself. The members share activities of a common interest. But they are different activities, but they have a common interest. They are different talents, but a common interest. They have different capabilities, but a common interest. And how do you, and that's what I mentioned earlier, form semi-formal and less structured basis? So that when you get together, maybe the first thing is just to go around for self-care and self-compassion and just mention one positive thing before you start. And you'll watch the mood change of everyone around the group. the dopamine begins to get released, and then people begin to respond in a different way. Then the third component is the practice. So communities of practice. You start with the domain, look at the community, and then the practice. So in the community of practice, you intentionally begin to include those people that you saw during COVID-19 and you thought, wow, I've known this person for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and I never saw someone who's so energized, so enthusiastic. They were just so committed. They were always the last person around. Or you never knew that someone had such amazing IT or digital skills. So look at the practice, the practitioners. What is the range of experiences? Don't say, oh, no, we only need experienced people. No, that's how we need to pass on the skill to the next generation. Bring in those early development researchers. Get them to question you and say, oh, well, I've got 25 years of experience. I've got 40 years of experience. No, let them question that, because we never stop learning and we don't know it all. They've maybe got a story to tell. They've got narratives. They've maybe got competent methods for problem solving because they had to struggle. They had to survive. Take the students from lower or poorer socioeconomic backgrounds and let them work your budget. You'll find out that they will make your budget for funding go far further than those that have always had enough funds, that have always had enough money to do things. And they've never had to think about tomorrow. And you'll find those students, those early career researchers, they start stretching your funding. They start using paper on both sides. They collect the paper from the photocopier and they make scratch paper for the reverse. Or they turn it over and they print on the other side when they're doing a draft. They always pack, look at the group, they pack their laptops always back into the case. They don't just walk with it in their hand because they cannot afford to break it, drop it, because that laptop is precious. They know how much it took to actually purchase that laptop. So shared lived experiences serve as the integrity in the group. Never lose the human touch. Reach out and touch someone, not necessarily physical. Reach out and touch someone who walks into the room and is always smiling. And every day you see the person, they're always smiling. And on the 5th meeting, say, my colleague, I have to say something. And say it in front of the others. Whenever I see you, I love the fact that you're always smiling. And this is what communities of practice is about. Communities of practice is part of the recalibration so that we don't lose where we're coming from. And if you want to look at some of the values of communities of practice that have come from Wenger and Trainer's work, there are short-term values and there are long-term values. There are short-term values for members and there are short-term values for organizations. And similarly, there are long-term values for members and long-term values for organizations. And I leave that for you to go through because it sums up what I have said. But I don't want to, because I have 2 minutes left. And I want to read this by Marianne Williamson. She's a poet in the United States of America. And this was before COVID. And she published it just at the beginning. I think it was February of 2020. And she said, in every community, there is work to be done. In every nation, there are wounds to heal. In every heart, there is the power to do it. Those hands represent your hands. Those white cutout figures represent the smallest unity of the Malaysian society, the family. The family is in your hands. Let's never lose the purpose as to why we do what we do in healthcare. Let us not build silos again and build walls around us. Let's keep those walls down and let us keep communicating. Let us keep on interacting. Let us keep on synergizing. Let us keep on influencing the next generation. Let us keep on apologizing when we have made a mistake. Let's keep on saying, yes, I have faults, but I'm working on it. Because in every community, there's work to be done. In every nation, there are wounds to heal. In every heart, there is the power to do it. Terima kasih. I thank you for attending, and I thank Dr. Paul particularly for his amazing and brilliant organization. He kept me on my toes. I had shared with him that I have 9 keynote presentations between past weekend and the first weekend in December, and he kept me going. Without him, it would not have been possible. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the very important insight. Now, I would like to invite Prof. Rusli again to present Prof. Dr. Mustafa a certificate as a token of appreciation. Please welcome, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Rafia. And Assalamualaikum, Professor Dr. Mustafa Bodrik.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I think they take a message if you about working this work still in the community. There is wound to be healed in the nation, and finally in the hearts for us. Yes. I think this is a very very touching what is not only sentiment but I suppose takeaway message for all of us working in places like MAHSA and having diverse international audience. So with that. Professor Dr. Musa Bodrik, thank you very much for all of us from MAHSA University and especially from our faculty. I would like to now award you the certificate of appreciation for this excellent presentation, and we hope that we will touch base again in future, and we hope to learn from your wisdom and your experience. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. Thank you. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Sama-sama.
Sama-sama.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof. Rusli, and thank you, Prof. Mustafa. Next, we would like to invite our plenary speaker, Prof. Dr. Sharul Bahya binti Kamaruzzaman, Professor of Faculty of Medicine, Deputy Dean of Higher Degree University Malaya, Malaysia, to share with us on health challenges and opportunities for older people. Please welcome, Prof.
Thank you very much to MAHSA College and for the organizers, especially Professor Paul, for the invitation. I'll be talking about healthcare opportunities and challenges for older people. Let me just share my screen. And I hope you can see it now. Okay,
yes,
thank you. So this is the title of my talk. So when talking about healthcare or anything with regards to aging, I'd like to actually, for us all to put ourselves and how we see ourselves aging in the future. Because the future aged will be all of us here watching today. What does that look like? And that closely relates to your vision of your aged self. So whether it's positive or negative, these perceptions of aging is indirectly affected by your own self-image. So if you have a positive outlook, you're empowered, you're actually doing everything and every means possible to age healthily, actively, then that will be a positive image. But if you're in your 30s and 40s, you're already slowing down and having a very poor perception of what old age would be, this might actually compound that possibility to be a very close reality. So by definition, our experience of old age really differs because it may differ because of the time that we're living in, and also how that time will have changed since we are going through this pandemic. Imagine what that would be, and how healthcare delivery, which has been impacted by our pandemic now, would be in the future in terms of telemedicine, telehealth, how certain far to reach places could possibly be given opportunities to be reached virtually, etc. The cohort that we live in as well, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, our culture and frames us through the times and cohorts into how and it shapes the way in which we age, because all this influences all the other the determinants of aging. So if you look at the time, before it used to be that you, although it still is right now, aging, old age is a time for of respect. You've attained a certain level of virtue in life, etc., and therefore it's time to slow down. That may still be the case, but slowing down perhaps may mean different things. And before, it used to be that you are pensioned off at 55, but now we're trying to change policy to make sure that older people are able to work way into their old age because they can contribute a lot more. And those things sort of mirrors the time that we are in, which is changing. The cohort is also changed. People look, dress differently. Islamization, for example, has changed certain perceptions between our races living in the community, etc. So we cannot deny that these changes are taking place. And hence culture also goes hand in hand with it. Like the free days of the 50s and 60s, many Muslims will sort of like, frown on this because this was actually part of the culture. But things have changed very differently. And I think we must face facts and reality that it has perceived the way in which we see ourselves. All that aside, people are living longer. And when it used to be in the 50s or 60s, back in the 1950s, people have lived up to a much longer age because of population aging. And this population aging is occurring where we are in developing countries, where if you look at the bar charts on the right, that there are very many more older people rising up to an older age over a very much shorter period of time compared to the developed countries. And this population aging, if you look at the red vertical bar, occurs most rapidly and in highest numbers in Asia. So we are the fastest rise in population aging in the world. And that speed, if you look in the light blue chart, where it took France, Switzerland, US nearly 100 years to attain a doubling of their population, of the aging population, it would take Malaysia a very short time to shift from an older population of 7%, which we are currently, to 14%. And like the middle-aged person that we are now, going into old age, by a few short years, which is where we're in 2021 right now, not short of 15 years, we will be, well, thick in the middle, where we have a higher numbers of people living to an older age and a broader neck, where if you look higher up that pyramid, population pyramid, there is greater longevity in our population, both male and female, by that time. So we have and are catching up to the world population, especially those who are over 75 years of age. And with that, there will be, alongside it, high levels of disability and dependency. So we must expect that that also comes hand in hand with population aging. So hence, these high levels of dependency will impact us economically. It will create the need for more health and social services, especially in the community, because if you realize now in Malaysia, everybody wants to see a specialist. They no longer care to go to their community doctor. In fact, the community doctor is very quick to refer on to specialists in tertiary centers, and hence there is a bottleneck. And as we've seen in this pandemic, a big problem arose when people could not get to their specialists in the tertiary and secondary centers, and therefore there were many deaths at home and further ill health, and we are seeing the impact of that now. So community-based, community support services need to be better engaged and developed in our populations as we age. And with that, also that need for health professionals trained in the geriatric assessment. So as we adapt to old age, this increased global aging leads to doomsday scenarios, workforce shortage, a financial collapse of pension, social isolation creating loneliness, insecurity, dependency of older adults on those of the working age. And these challenges, which has been occurring from before and currently as we see during, and we will see after the pandemic, have social, economic, and as Malaysia is going through this, political challenges. So adapting is because of entirely different diseases that we go through, conditions and social structures, and these are what are impacted as and are involved as most people survive to these later stages. So by increasing longevity, this raises the issue that you have net gain in active functional years versus total years of disability and dysfunction. So we want to balance or tip the balance towards net gain in active functional years. And hence we need to actually ensure that we have, we fight and against this evidence that may give rise to pessimism. Therefore, that we need to actually improve our functional years gained versus our compromised years. So it's really about healthy and active aging from as young as we can possibly be before we get to that old age. And the reason why is because age-associated diseases such as dementia is amongst us, and it's rapidly increasing, and we actually have a long way to go in increasing the understanding, education, awareness of this age-associated disease, as it impacts many people. This study by Alzheimer's Disease International looked at every 3 seconds someone in the world develops dementia, and that is not an untrue fact. And 2 out of 3 people globally believe there is little or no understanding of dementia in their countries, and Malaysia is one of that. And as the data here says, people will be living with dementia by 2050. 68% of them belong to low and middle income countries, and that's where we're at. So old age equates to being uncertain, with challenges facing us, not just in the health sector, but financial and social protection, as well as the importance of needing to communicate our needs and rights. So it's because older people tend to suffer from multiple diseases, chronic diseases, and at higher risk of poverty, whether absolute or relative. And when they can't cope with these challenges, then we are dealt with unfavorable outcomes. We see recurrent and delayed presentation to hospital, prolonged hospitalization, increased nursing home intakes, and of course, high rates of mortality. So this impact doesn't just affect older people, but their caregiver, and indirectly, directly also impacts on the community. So therefore, these health and financial provisions, although available, but it's still underused, and due to lack of awareness and knowledge. I mean, we have many healthcare levels of levels of care in the community, but perhaps poor access, lack of awareness and knowledge affects those who badly need it, especially the B40. And since the pandemic and our socioeconomic decline, the M40 are also very much impacted by this. So this increased cost to social welfare, social isolation, vulnerability may lead to another phenomenon which is under talked about, under publicized, which is elder abuse. And elder abuse is not just physical, but it is also mental and financial abuse of older people. And as we see during the pandemic, there are lots of scams, lots of people losing money, being cheated out of their life savings, etc. And the older person is very much at the front of this and affected. So there are lots of barriers to healthy aging. You might recognize a few. Outdated and ageist stereotypes. I long to see the day when our Hari Raya, Deepavali, or Chinese New Year advertisements do not picture or broadcast the views of older people needing to be looked to be pitied, vulnerable, etc., but more empowered, healthy, active aging icons amongst that, so that we give a different perspective of what this looks like. Okay, I wonder if there is any problem with the audio, because Dr. Paul, you're calling me? Can you hear me?
Prof,
yes?
you know if you are moving your slides, because it for us it is still in the first page.
Oh, good Lord, I am moving my slide. I am moving my slide.
Yeah, maybe you can move towards the current slide that you are in. All right, yeah.
Can you see that?
Yes, yes, Prof.
Oh, so that when I do, I'm very, very sorry.
No problem.
But these were my slides earlier. But when I do the presentation slide presentation, you're not seeing me move.
Yeah,
Is that right?
it was on the
No
front.
wonder the previous speaker also was in this mode. Okay, all right, okay. So let's carry on. So barriers of old age. Now I've spoken about all doom and gloom, but is it all that? So we need to think again. And it is the aging market that is the lens that we need to use and see through to develop strategic plans. And older adults would be the ones that are at the forefront of where we create a new niche market, i.e. fueling growth and innovation. And I believe that's the actual vision that you have behind this particular conference as well. Go down. So living and aging well, these are those personalities that are out there that we want to aspire to be. But the reality is, of course, there is no typical older person, and that we all see or view our elders in the community using different lens. But we need to actually project more positive, influential, empowered, healthy, active people who are our stakeholders. So when we want to meet the needs of older people, we need to think that their needs are not just unidimensional, it is multidimensional. It's not just their health, it is their social environment, their physical environment, even their virtual environment, and access to tools and technology in the fast-paced world that we live in right now. And that we also need to understand that they are heterogeneous. We're all different socioeconomically. So therefore, our needs may be different. B40 may need to be able to communicate their rights, the ability to access certain technologies, to be able to pay bills in a very simple way, and have portals in the community that could help them do that. Whereas the M40 may want to basically update on their health literacy. They're already empowered. They want to have channels to access further activities that would actually engage them and optimize their healthy aging. So these all evolve with rapid urbanization, and therefore the facilities and the technologies and availability of these to older populations need to evolve. And with that, of course, is the political will and governance. And I despair when I see headlines in the newspapers that talk about us building more nursing homes. That is not what we want. We want the older person to be supported well and aging in place. And, we could have various discussions about this. And I feel that with the political will and the governance, if they are aided and guided by older people as well as the people that look after them, this will be a better future for us all. So global aging, there is the impact of it. And of course, we are reaping the rewards of the triumph of modern society. We're able to keep people living longer for a very, a period of time. It's not uncommon to see people who are centenarians. But what is the quality of life? And how do we increase that longevity and quality alongside it? And for this, we need to look at it, as mentioned before, stabilizing elements of social, economic, and the environment. And for that, these elements need to be education and awareness, healthcare, as we mentioned, tools and technology in which to actually try and develop this further, and the law and policies that could frame it. And therefore, to manage the impact of global aging, we need to see, and this is our C strategy, that these stabilizing factors are put in place. And priority areas for action, I've taken this from the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and one of it is the 4 aspects that we see here. We need to ensure that everyone can grow old in an age-friendly environment, improve the monitoring, measurements, and understanding, so education and awareness, align health systems, so what's going on in tertiary care needs to be communicated to primary and secondary care, and a feedback loop, so older populations are better served. And of course, develop long-term care systems that would allow an older person, for example, if they're single, they grow old, they've got no family, that the house that they live in can be actually monetized to when converted to actually looking after them in their old age, for example, in long-term care facilities. So this has not been developed into policies as yet, so we need to get a move on. So Malaysia's aging needs, and this is something that I personally sort of looked at, and this is, if you look at the top square, you see those who are young old, those who've just pensioned, 55 to 74 years of age, and then you have the old, and the very elderly, more than 90 years of age. And you have the B40 and those who are above the 60% economic belt. And they're going to be different. So various age strata, various economic stratas. This needs to be looked at in a model. And what I'm suggesting is that we have a national model for empowered aging communities. This needs to be framed into policy papers and legislation. And it can start within our own communities, empower them, and create community healthcare hubs that would actually try and develop this and between stakeholders within the community for older people, and therefore promoting what we call aging in place. So the needs of the elderly, what we know and what is actually that we need to learn is just the tip of the iceberg. And super aging is one of the things that countries like Japan and certain countries in Europe are actually experiencing. And it's no longer seen as the burden, but there are ways in which you could actually improve the aging market. And therefore, how, if we look further for Malaysia, how would super aging amongst Malaysians look like? How do we manage this change, and how do we embrace the opportunities? This is Mr. Wong Swee Lin. He's the late Mr. Wong. He was our former national photographer, and he took the famous, the legendary Merdeka photo. And he, this is a very, very special photograph that we use in our geriatric unit at UMMC when we talk about safeguarding the future of our nation builders. And that's all the older population right now. And therefore, we need to, when we look at this, we go back to basics. It's about healthy aging. It's about how we manage this, how we get them to mingle, how we get them to move. And the social connections is also a part of it, not just in minimizing the risk of disease and disability, but continuing with maintaining their physical and cognitive function, as well as continuing engagement in life. And talking about this, we need to look at how the extra 20 years that we have post-retirement, how can we use them? And it all depends on health. And of course, what makes us healthy in old age is not random. We need to sort of know that we can actually control it. Although we have certain genetic inheritances from our parents, our forefathers, but how we live, how we adapt to our environment, how we actually control what we eat, how we move, how we mingle, actually, and how we actually access our healthcare, and control our health behaviors determine how we age and how our health is. And of course, things like who we are, what we do, and where we live also has bearings on how we age. So determinants are not just the genetics, but it's also our environment, how we think, as well as social determinants of health. And there are various levels of approaching healthy aging. And these are from an individual point of view, from the societal, to the system, to the environment, and these are the various levels of approach. But what about Malaysia? Where are we at, and how can we actually embrace this? So there are many different initiatives that have gone on to actually help us focus. And where Malaysia is, unfortunately, with our National Health and Morbidity Survey, we have high levels of non-communicable disease. And therefore, areas of research and areas of not just translational research, but implemental research focus on things that actually impact us, such as diabetes, metabolic syndrome, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, cancer, mental health, brain conditions, physical violence, injury, how these disease and burden of diseases and its determinants and the interventions that we do are all things that we need to focus on as an academic research center. And recognizing that there are changing phases of healthcare in Malaysia. So where we had back in 1957, when we achieved independence, the average lifespan was much lower. And with urbanization, increased national income, we have increased that back in 2005 to 70 for males and 76 for females. This has gone slightly higher currently. So when I first returned from my studies in the UK and from my training in geriatric medicine, I was the first female, and I was one of 4 people who were geriatricians in the country. And so we have increased and exploded to higher numbers, but it's still not enough because more than 60 those who are over 60 years old account for over 50% of all admissions to emergency. And therefore, people who are trained and recognize the issues around old age and their healthcare needs to increase. And we looked at this in terms of data, the numbers that are older that attend and present to emergency services, especially in my hospital, have quadrupled. In fact, this has become 10 times now. And therefore, we've seen an evolution where from being caregivers, family caregivers, we've had a cheaper resource of live-in foreign domestic maids. So therefore, caregiver training needs to sort of take on a different dimension. We're not just training caregivers who are family, but also live-in foreigners, domestic maids who may understand differently about different education levels too, and different language perhaps when we do caregiver training. So, and currently the reduced availability of these maids actually compromise a lot of the care that are going on. So we are now facing a caregiver crisis. This is huge. So our opportunities, I've talked about all our challenges. The opportunities are great. We need to future-proof. So this is a 4-step approach. We need to future-proof our inpatient services. Our ambulatory care and community care needs to be addressed. At the same time, educate and make aware all healthcare professionals will have to learn. Whether you're a surgeon, orthopedics, whether you're a dermatologist, or whether you're an occupational therapist, physiotherapist, etc., all healthcare professionals will have to learn to cope for other people. Because like it or not, they're presenting to you. And step 4, of course, are the care, inventions, and training involved. And of course, our hospital care, we need to make it fit. We need to make sure that all the enhanced acute inpatient facilities are actually geared towards attending to older people, their problems, having subacute geriatric rehabilitation, respite care, end-of-life care, step-down care whether in the hospital community needs to be upgraded. And because older people tend to present differently than younger people, so they tend to present with acute confusional states, and this increases the risk of death, etc. So we need to ensure that delirium management is best managed. Liaison services, which we see a lot of orthogeriatrics, surgical preoperative care, psychiatric care. There are liaisons within all these various specialties will enable older people to have better care in the long run. In the community, it's very timely that we look into all in terms of prevention of hospital admissions and having a rapid assessment unit. This is something that we envision for University of Malaya, having a not just our general geriatric services and outpatients, but a falls service. We already have that, as well as a memory service, and eventually a daycare hospital where patients won't need to be admitted. And we have a small setup in our ambulatory care and daycare outpatient services, where we have patients that can come in for bed sore management, blood transfusions, etc., infusions where they need. Educate and awareness, this goes on all the time, and this is just one of the many sessions that I and my colleagues in geriatric medicine give. And this is World Elderly Month, 1st of October. So October, we're very busy creating this awareness and planning out our campaigns throughout the year about all healthcare professionals needing to learn and cope. We need to actually work on the educational thrust of this, making sure that our undergraduate, postgraduate medical training curriculum include care for the older person. And we have managed to do this in our national postgraduate curriculum for internal medicine. We've injected geriatric medicine. Our undergraduate, not all universities have a geriatric curriculum, so that needs to be addressed urgently. We need to ensure that other allied healthcare, in terms of their curriculum, that there is an injection of geriatric and gerontology. In terms of that, geriatric nursing needs to be enhanced. Our allied health professionals are included and therefore should be greater appreciated within a multidisciplinary team when we look at care and training for the older people. Research-based activities also need to be more multidisciplinary. So therefore, all healthcare professionals are inclusively incorporated into this step 3. And if you look at Malaysian geriatricians, we have got a variety of many of them, which started with 4 of me, has now exploded to more than 50. So we may still be on target. And if you look at step 4, in terms of inventions and solutions, I'd like to invite all of you to our Innovative Aging Conference, which is occurring just a few short days away on the 28th to the 30th of October. This is a collaboration between the Malaysian Invention and Design Society, MINDS, and the Gerontological Association of Malaysia, of which I'm a member and vice president. This is a virtual conference, and we have innovative talks by leaders in technology from abroad. So we've got our key note speaker from Japan, from Cyberdyne Cybernetics, for those with inventors within various areas of the aging market. Those who are developers are also giving talks on this, as well as the researchers in innovative technology, gerotechnology. So I'd like to invite you all to our next conference. Please look this up. And last but not least, when we have opportunities, this provides solutions for healthcare. And just to reiterate, in order to promote active and productive aging, we need to create, on one hand, age-friendly environments, align all the healthcare systems so that they feed back into each other, and develop long-term care systems. And this will be the ability for us to establish foundations for a functioning system in the future, and at the same time promote things like ageism, promote positive image, and place the older person at the center of healthcare. And in conclusion, to address these challenges, we need to understand the needs and the changing needs of older people, be familiar with the problems of old age. I mentioned about the 4-step approach. We need to educate and prepare aging populations in terms of the realities and expectations. And therefore, all this is teetering very dangerously on our new political will. And therefore, it is up to us, the healthcare, the scientific community, to create more creative, equitable responses to the needs of older people and their caregivers. And this is something that we would need to work together with in the future. So I thank you very much for the organizers of this talk for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for the very interesting input on health challenges and opportunities for older people. May I now invite Prof. Rusli to present a certificate as a token of appreciation. Please welcome, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Rafia, and thank you again. Thank you very much, Prof. Shahrul Baya. Certainly, we enjoy listening to you, but we are a bit worried that all of us are getting old, no? But I suppose
don't be worried.
But I suppose we take comfort in the fact that old is also gold, I was told, no? Hopefully that is true. So anyway, thank you very much. I think it's It's
Terima kasih.
perhaps I say, one like wake up call for all of us to actually take note of what you have said, and I think certainly it is timely, that we actually do some soul searching in terms of what we do when we when we age, right? Yeah. So on that note, I think, Prof, thank you very much again for supporting our conference. And on this note, I would like to award you this certificate of appreciation for being supportive and have contributed to this conference. And we hope to see you again in near future, and perhaps again to share your, your wisdom and experience on geriatrics in Malaysia and worldwide. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. UM and MAHSA are very good neighbors. So we'll continue to work together. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof. Rusli, and thank you, Prof. Asharobaya. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached to the end of MAHSA International Medical Technology Conference 2021 Mi-MED opening ceremony. On behalf of the organizing committee, I wish to convey our heartfelt thanks to all our guests online and conference participants for joining us this morning. We will now have lunch break and we will be back for the parallel session at the dedicated Google Meet link. The link is provided in the program schedule. We will end the session with MAHSA song. Thank you everyone and have a nice day ahead.
Di sini kita warnai kehidupan, menggapai cita, mengotakkan impian. Kita sang juara, peneraju cemerlang, merintis laluan gemilang, aspirasi negara dijulang. Semaikan keyakinan seluruh warga, kita mantapkan jaringan antara bangsa. Di sinilah